Good evening and welcome to the special council budget meeting on February 1st, 2024. This is our final budget meeting scheduled for 2024. Tonight, we hope, so far. Tonight, we have two presentations, some written correspondence, and then council will continue with budget deliberations. I'll start with roll call of council for the benefit of the public watching. I, Mayor Shantz, am present and chairing this meeting. Councillor Bryant.
Present.
Councillor Burgess.
Present.
Councillor Cadeau.
Present.
Councillor Grant.
Present.
Councillor Schwint.
Present.
Thank you. The land on which we meet has been here from time immemorial, and people have inhabited southern Ontario for time immemorial. We recognize the Chinatan, also called the Attawandaron, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee people who have lived here when settlers arrived and who share this land with us. May we together learn to care for and respect each other, our flora and fauna, and the land that sustains us. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we will start off with our presentations, and I'll welcome, who am I welcoming? Dana Costello first from the Downtown Elmira BIA Community Improvement Fund funding request. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you.
Trying to get your presentation up.
Mhm. Well, thank you very much for having me, Mayor Shantz and councillors. Tonight, I'm going to ask that the township sponsor the Downtown Elmira BIA with 2 items, and I'm going to walk you through what those are. I shared this slide with you a couple months ago. This is the team of volunteer business owners and property owners that serve on the Downtown Elmira BIA. When we spoke last, part of my presentation was giving you a background of what the Downtown Elmira Community Improvement Plan was and how our focus was those streams, those grant streams that we were trying to offer the downtown businesses, offering them an incentive to invest in themselves. And I shared some of these photos during that presentation. We also went over this graph showing how much money the Downtown Elmira BIA has distributed over the last 4 years. And just as a reminder, it's over $21,000 to date. I do want to confirm with you that in 2023, we did not distribute any funds. We did have an applicant for the facade improvement program and the accessibility grant. However, the work was not going to be completed on time. So we're going to encourage them to apply in 2024. Since that meeting, staff was directed to coordinate a meeting with the BIA to talk about how the Community Improvement Plan effort could possibly be shared with the township or taken over with the township. That meeting was held. We did review the tasks associated to the CIP. We brainstormed a lot of ideas. We strongly feel like the township staff and the BIA is on the same page, and we have a tentative plan. Derek Hughes, the Economic Development and Tourism Officer, will be picking up those conversations sometime in February. The Downtown Elmira BIA has already undergone our budgetary conversations, and as a group, we strongly feel that we should open 3 streams this year, one being accessibility, the facade improvement stream, as well as the landscape improvement stream. So that the landscape improvement stream is the one that you have not heard a lot about. Part of that stream, it is associated to greenery and things like that. But what we're really trying to hone in on is encouraging local business to invest in patios downtown. We've had various conversations with township and regional staff about how we can make this happen. We don't think it's going to happen quickly, but we do think that there is interest from the downtown business, and we'd like to offer an incentive to try and at least have one business open it to see how it goes. So I can confirm that the Downtown Elmira BIA has designated significant funding from our $65,000 budget this year to go towards these CIP funding streams. Accessibility at $5,000, facade improvement at $15,000, and landscape improvement at $5,000. In 2023, the Township of Woolwich offered $4,000 to go towards our accessibility stream. Since that no money was dispersed in 2023, that funding remained with the township. In 2024, we're asking that the township offer the same sponsorship and allow us to promote the accessibility stream in 2024 using those funds. Also in 2023, the township sponsored the BIA with $13,000 to go towards our greenery efforts. Our greenery efforts include things like the flower baskets, the 10 medium-sized planters downtown, the 10 medium-sized planters winter decor, the 6 large planters downtown, and I think watering for all of them. That was a big topic of conversation last year. And of course, growing those flowers, installing them, and tearing it down at the end of the season. This year, we're hoping that the Township of Woolwich will be open to sponsoring us again in those efforts, as the greenery contract with Flores Terra eats up about half of our budget. The reason why we're asking for an extra $2,000 is because vendor cost increases, which are actually quite low. So I don't want to make it seem like there's a big inflation there, but it is a little bit. We are also looking at replacing the hanging flower baskets. We believe they're almost 20 years old, and we've lost quite a few. We want to expand and order 43 of those baskets. The baskets we're looking at are self-watering, which we estimate will save about 40% of our watering labor costs. And we feel that investing in those will actually pay for themselves over 2 years. We also want to explore 6 trees in the 6 large concrete planters. We normally just put in flowers in those large concrete planters. We're working with Flores Terra exploring, could that be a tree, the same type of trees that are outside the clock tower in those same planters? Could it be a hydrangea plant or something larger to provide some shade? And we also want to continue with the winter arrangements. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation. Again, we are asking that the Township of Woolwich sponsor the accessibility grant in the amount of $4,000, as well as our greenery efforts in the amount of $15,000.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there questions? I'm not seeing any. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If some come up as we're going through John's presentation, we'll call you back up, I guess.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. John, come on up. Next, we have BIA Board Co-Chair John Clay to give us his presentation.
Good evening, everyone.
Welcome.
Mayor, council members. I wish the baskets that I owned were only 20 years old, but we'd like something newer there too. So thank you for having us here tonight. It's always a pleasure to speak in front of all of you and not on Zoom. So this is great. It's been great to get back together with our group as well too and do more meetings in person. I will just be doing a quick review of what we did this year, projects that are lined up for next year, and then go through the budget for what we were planning for the year that will include, hopefully, in agreement to some of those funds that Dana was speaking to. So 2023 year in review, seasonal decor, I think, is up first. You all saw the starlights. Obviously, most of you should be aware of the, how shall I call it, the electricity issues that we've had in the poles downtown. We'd love to put snowflakes like that on every pole if we could. And we're looking towards some things that will allow us to do something a little bit more standardized in the future. For right now, those we feel look great, the garland, et cetera. And we're looking for the new greenery partnership to continue on this year that we've had with Floristera to allow us to do things like we talked about with the new hanging baskets and trees in the 6 large planters. Moonlight Madness, this is always a favorite of ours. It's the only event that we continue to run, and it's getting bigger and bigger, save for some AV miscues on speeches by said mayor in attendance. But we're working on it.
I try to get a louder voice.
Yeah, I
but it
know,
doesn't
you
work.
did fabulously.
whistle real loud.
We take
Can't-
entire responsibility for that one. So that's on list of things to do for next year for sure. Our biggest numbers yet, the new Maple Leaf Taffy Station and the attendance again of the ice sculptor Pierre. Yeah. And we're looking to add to that next year. It was great to have the joint effort with the township on Elmira 100. Next year, we might be exploring a different Santa. Santa's getting a little long in the tooth and was struggling to get around the downtown. So we may still have Santa, but he just might not be the same Santa. We're looking at a larger choir, and obviously the AV system upgrade might be worth spending some money on to make that a little bit more efficient. Mill Street Community Seating, I think you all know this is a passion project of ours. It was our effort during COVID to try and make community seating more readily available downtown, welcome families, young people, et cetera, to enjoy some of the restaurants that we had in conjunction with Sip and Bite. It's always when the region needs to put up the big signs, et cetera, it's never the best part of it. And I think what we saw this year too is that it's big in the beginning, in the early months of spring and summer. And then as the wind picks up and the heat picks up, and by the time September rolls around, there's nobody there. Even in August, while people are away on holidays, it's just becoming less and less well attended. Next slide, please. So we're taking all those things into account for a decision that we'll speak to in a minute. Maintenance, this was something started and helped out and operated by Dana, but we had a partnership with the Elmira District Community Living where they helped to maintain Mill Street, wiping down tables, garbage, et cetera, as well as restain the benches that we had downtown. They were refurbished 2 years ago or 3 years ago fully? 2 years ago. But we realized that some extra staining could have been done and that they were showing some wear already. So we worked with those individuals who were paid minimum wage with the representative to follow along the work process. And we found it to be a great relationship. So they helped us stain those benches and maintain our Mill Street community seating. New businesses this year, Arthur Street Kitchen and Bar. Thank you, John. And GTA Vapes in town as well too. So moving into 2024, a few things that we have on the dockets. The improvement streams, the CIP, again, something that's near and dear to our hearts, which we've talked about at length, and hoping that council is starting to see the reasoning for us investing in that 2018, 2019 when it came into play. It's lost some of its luster since the first year that we've done it, secondary to COVID and some of the spending habits of the businesses. But with the new relationship that Derek and staff are hoping to foster, we can make it a bigger and better program and actually deliver those funds like we would like to. We have the budget to do it, and we feel it's one of the best ways to help our downtown look nicer and for our businesses to get involved. Seasonal decor, again, it'll be a big ticket item for us as well too. Potentially refurbishing some of those snowflakes, adding some extra lighting, but also the Gobo project, which is a series of, what would you call them, Dana? Spotlights, projector spotlights that can have logos, et cetera, around the downtown. We're trying to how shall I say, get past some regional issues about are they distracting to motorists, et cetera. But we feel that we're making some headway and that could become a reality this year. The greenery contract again with Floristera, we thought they did a great job with our 10 medium-sized planters, our 6 large ones. As Dana was mentioning, we're thinking that some medium-sized trees that could provide a bit of shade will fit in there. We're not sure yet if they may be the same size that you might see in the same size planter by the clock tower, because we believe those ones have roots that extend right down through the base of them and into the ground. But with the amount of dirt, et cetera, that those large size planters can hold, there should be enough for at least a medium-sized tree. And we are looking at any way to increase the greenery downtown. I won't go through all that again. The art exhibit, the first time we did it was what year? 2 years ago. So you've all hopefully seen, obviously, the mural on Sip and Bite and the 9 8x8 murals. We'd like to replace those this year with new community art pieces and looking at potentially another mural if possible, and also adding wraps that we've investigated to go around those very gray and concrete boring looking planters, which are great to hold nice plants. They just don't look so awesome. So we're asking for a grant to be added to what we are putting in. So essentially this art project will depend on whether that grant comes through for us, the scope of the project. The FedDev grant, yes. Thank you, Dan. So community seating 2024, it pains me to say, it's not happening this year. We've had enough, there's been positive feedback as well, but enough negative feedback to say, and empty seats to say that it's not worth the effort that we take every year to put it on. We're not sure that Sip and Bite is interested in holding their patio again. They had limited openings as well and limited staffing availability to keep it open. So they're aware of this decision as well. So I'll bring up just a few key items of the budget. Just going back to Mill Street, one of the things that we're looking for and we are looking to, you'll see in the budget, provide some funding is we'd like to still invest in the community seating area between Bargain Shop and Kitchen Cuttings. So what is existing there already is a few picnic tables and a couple of the big planters. And we would like to spruce that up a little bit, obviously with the trees, possibly some green turf, something to make that area a little nicer. Obviously the new artwork would help there as well, such that we can still have a community seating area in the downtown for people to go and enjoy food, community, etc. So, as most of you know, the BIA levy goes up 2% every year. So that and the Walmart levy makes up the giant share of what we receive as income. We've discussed about the potential support from council, and the transfer from surplus just ends up being what we would end up transferring if our budget came to be, how much money we would need to spend out of our surplus. And I tell you, we're trying to spend it. So we have a surplus in the bank right now, and looking at these projects that we've talked about is one way that we're looking to go ahead. Some different things there, the Santa Claus Parade, new business welcome packages that John Santaris is looking to take on. The Elmira Wagenrads program, we continue to keep that up there in hopes that it may come again. Almeida has been unable to do it, just logistics, etc. But we sort of always kept this around in case she does come asking. We want to have that in reserve for her to be able to offer that support. Moonlight Madness, we're upping the ante again for to the 5,000 that we had last year. As I said, we felt it was just such a great event with so many families and things downtown that we'd like to add a few more things to it if we can. And if not, we're just going to spend the $2,500 on a new AV system. Thank you. So the Woolwich, can you go back to that other slide? Perfect. General advertising marketing projects, again, those can be variable buckets that we pull for any number of different marketing projects or extra things that we do downtown. If we do decide to spend money on turf for the community seating, which has its own line item, we may pull some money from there as well too, to advertise it or consider it a marketing project as well too. Thanks.
John, just on the, if you can go back again, should that first total be 3,200?
Depending on where I crop the slides, it may not be.
So the first total on the sponsorship?
Yeah, it should be. That may not have been added correctly on the spreadsheet.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll look into that when I look back at it. Okay. So obviously, as Dana was mentioning, our largest item is our greenery project for the flower baskets, the ground planters, and some of the extra things that we've talked about already tonight. Seasonal decor, what we have right now in terms of the snowflakes, putting them up, getting them back down again, the garland, potentially adding some lighting around the poles. And then part of that project would be the gobo lighting that Dana was referring to. Outside community seating, that now is away from Mill Street and focusing in the space between Bargain Shop and Kitchen Cuttings. And then we have our 3 streams for the CIP program with accessibility, landscape, and facade. And like Dana was saying, we know there's at least one that will be applying this year for basically their contractor issues and getting the things that she needed to apply. So looking forward to being able to hand out that money early in the season. Seasonal banners, as usual, putting up, taking down, and possibly a run of a few more banners that we need to complete some of the poles. Weed control, we didn't need to spend a lot on weed control this year, and we didn't have many complaints. And we take that to the fact that in the earlier years, we had pulled a lot of the weeds instead of spraying them so they don't come back. We likely will need to reinvest some of that funds, and I think I don't know if it's Jared or some, we'd still be looking potentially at the $2,000 that comes from the township to extend the area with which we put together or that we cover in terms of our weeding. Downtown maintenance is very basic stuff that could be any number of different things, from cleanup of the seating area, etc. Okay. And the last few things are mostly administration, the audit that we have every year, a little bit of food and drinks for our AGM that we just had on Tuesday night. Payroll mainly is the big item we have a new administrative assistant who is a rock star at this point. So it's been great to have her so far, and she's just chomping at the bit to take on more stuff. So we're really looking forward to lean into her this year. Rental unit, etc. For those totals. So total expenses, it's obviously larger than what we are taking in income and why we need to pull from our surplus. And that is it. I'm happy to take on any questions if you'd like.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Cadell.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to the delegate, to both delegates, really. Working with the BIA has been a pleasure. I just want to thank you for your continued volunteer time to really making the downtown Elmira what it is. The question that I had for John is, when you were talking about the trees and the planters, are those going to be movable?
Likely not, and therefore not long-term either. So
Okay.
if those planters, the big planters, need to be moved, because they don't have bottoms on them. So we're filling them, we're putting the tree in and getting the growth that we can over a 2, 3, 4 year program. It would take a special sort of machine to pick that thing up from the bottom with the tree in it and move it.
So is there a timeline? Like, were you hoping to move forward with that this year? My only concern is I know that Arthur Street reconstruction is on the docket for, well, sometime in the future, and I would hate to see the trees become established just to be removed for the reconstruction.
So I would argue, yeah, that the larger planters, yeah, in a sec, come on up. The larger planters essentially are the two in between.
2 in between Kitchen Cuttings and the bar.
And then the rest are on the street, right?
2 outside of Farmers Plus,
Mhm.
and then 2 outside of TD. At our February 5th meeting, I'm bringing some ideas from Florist Terra that include a variety of trees, hydrangea options, as well as tall grasses with flowers that can be wrapped decoratively in the winter because of your concerns.
And I think too, it's even that short term gain of having some larger trees with some height and potentially some shade. Even if they did have to be pulled out at the end when there was reconstruction, they couldn't be moved. We like that option. Like, we're willing to spend that money in the short term to make that nicer downtown.
Thank you. I can appreciate that. We've been waiting a long time to finalize what's happening on Arthur Street, so.
Well, then we don't know either. That's the,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for that. Any other questions? Okay, this is coming in as part of budget, correct? Yeah. So yeah, thank you for all you do to make Elmira beautiful and keep our
Sure.
downtown
Well,
going. So
thank you for your
appreciate that.
support. It's great to be here tonight.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. You're welcome to stay or not, whichever you prefer. Okay, we have received written correspondence from Gordon Haywood, and you can see that in your revised package. And now we'll jump into budget. And at the last meeting, we asked staff a number of questions and asked for the information to be on tonight's agenda. So I guess my text here says I'll ask staff if there is any context they want to provide for each item, but I think I'll just go to each director as we go through it and do that individually. So starting with recreation and community services. Okay, Councillor Schwint wants to jump in.
Sorry, Mayor Charles, I'm just wondering, so going through the process by department, could we maybe get the general view of the treasurer's financial report on the reserves? So we have a big picture and trying to work it down. I was getting myself confused last meeting, I'll admit.
Okay.
And
Yeah, you want to start with the reserves?
if council and yourself are okay with that?
Sure. Council have any objections to that? Okay, Ms. MacArthur, you're off the hook for the time being, and Director Fairweather, you're up.
Thank you. Through the mayor. At the last meeting, we were asked to provide a analysis over the 10 years of the total reserve fund trends and reserves. In the graph, you'll see the blue, they denote the reserves that the city or the township has. And the trending line shows where they're at. So they've been pretty much flat over that 10-year window. And then you have your reserve funds that were climbing and declining and climbing and declining. And in 23, they declined, and in 24, they're declining more. It's a trend. The reserves and reserve fund utilization is based on need. So you put money away to the years that you need it. So it's not unusual to see the line go up and down on it. So that's the information that was asked. The linear line just sort of shows the trending over the 10-year window for each of them.
So just for clarity, because I know we were talking about that before we started, the reserve fund are allocated specific funds as opposed to a reserve that is a little more general. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, that's correct. The reserves are usually for your contingency type items like rate stabilizations and things like that. And reserve funds are set up for more specific purposes. And you have obligatory reserve funds that are set and prescribed by legislation. And that's why they can only be used for the purpose set. And then you have your discretionary, which is the other reserves that where council identifies a need, like your infrastructure reserve, and you set it up for those purposes.
So in the reserve funds, there, I mean, obviously, 2023 projection is lower than anything over the last 10 years. If those are obligatory reserves, which ones are we, that's an aggregate. Which ones are particularly in danger, if I can use that terminology?
I wouldn't say the reserve funds are in danger. Some of the reserve funds, and you could see that you were doing okay pre-COVID with your reserve fund balances, and then COVID came, and it's sort of throw in the funding strategies a big loop because the prices have escalated so much. So fire trucks, for example, not to pick on fire, have gone up astronomically compared to what you would have used when you did your forecast of funding needs back when you reset the contribution rates. So it's time to revisit those. Will your reserve funds be that low at the end of 2024 as forecasted? I don't see that happening because of the long lead time on a lot of your projects. If you do a road reconstruction, we're showing it as if it's all spent and funded and completed within 2024, but those usually span a period of time. Just like your fire trucks, we showed those as a full commitment. Yes, you have a commitment, you're ordering it. Will the cash flow out of the bank or the reserve fund directly in that year? Probably not. It's probably, some of those will come out in 25, 26. So when you do the projection at the end, as we do for the budget purposes, we're projecting it based on if we fund all of the items that are contained within the budget, this is where the reserve funds would potentially be at the end of the year. Doesn't mean they will be, but it's a guideline for moving forward. So you use that as planning going forward. And that's why I've talked to the CAO about looking at doing a reset on your reserve contributions and looking at over a long term. It hasn't been updated, I believe, for a few years, but when it was, the trend was that you were starting to build reserve funds. And with COVID and the price escalations, it's impacted those forecasts and projections that we used for that decision.
Councillor Schwentz.
Okay, yeah, this one looks important to me, so I've got a couple of questions. We've got a dark blue and a red line. We should really add the two together for total reserves. Is that correct? Not, one's not contained in the other.
If you wanted to do another stack graph, you'd have to add the reserve and reserve funds together to give you that. We tried to pull it out because they're sort of a different nature. So that's why we pulled it out that way.
I just want to make sure there, so I'm looking at 23 projected. I'm saying just over 10 million or 11 million is what you're looking at.
Mm,
That's right.
And then with the 24 proposed budget, that would be dropping to 1 million.
In the 24, I think your overall picture is about 1.6 combined.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're clear they're going from 11 to 1.6 in a 1 year period after dropping from, I'm going to call it 18 million in 22 and peaking at 24 million 4 years ago. Pretty significant. And I'll assume that each year we're accounting the same way. So unspent funds like the fire truck that wasn't delivered in 2020, for example, and came in 21 or 22. It's really the same thing, so it washes out. Is that fair?
Through the mayor, that what you're looking at on the graph and the bar graphs is what the actual year-end positions were for those. So it's not, it's showing what we're saying should be there. So it doesn't include what we've got in 24 is the projections of what's going to be spent. And that projections change because it's timing of payments.
I think Councillor Schwintz's point or question, if I understood it correctly, if we go back in time, we've never seen that kind of fluctuation in the graph anywhere in the last 10 years. Okay.
Through the mayor, that's correct.
Anyone else on the reserves and reserve funds? You good?
I'm good in reserves, but I guess the other one big picture before we get into departments is debentures and total debt. I think that's the other important thing. We're looking at our balance sheet. So could the interim director just give us a quick summary of debt this year? Sorry, at the end of 2023 and what would be proposed for the end of 2024, just so we've got clear in our minds going to these conversations.
Director Fairweather?
Just bear with me for 1 second. I just have to find the graph for that.
I think, is it 6.3? Is that what you're talking about, Councillor Schwint? With the draft capital budget request and the debt financing piece? Can you? Okay, thanks. Jeff's gonna put that on the screen for us. Yeah, thank you.
So we're basically reducing reserves from 11 million to 1.6 in the proposed budget. And we'll be adding debt financing or debentures 11.5, potentially less than the adjustments we make tonight.
That's correct.
I think those are key numbers for council to be thinking about during every department's presentation.
Did you want to talk about this while it's on the screen? It sort of ties in, Councillor Cadeau.
I share the concerns, I truly do. We'll kind of have our backs against the wall if we don't resort to reserve funding for some of this. We're gonna have to look at further debentures. So it's kind of the same thing in a sense.
Yes and no. There is a third option, reduce spending. And a fourth option, increase the levy.
Or a fifth option, and that's take 3 and 4 and do it together.
Okay, sorry, I missed that, but that's okay. Since we've got this on the screen now, why don't we really mix everybody up and call on Director Poupet to go through this piece? This is 6.3 if you're following along.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, through you to members of council. As heard at last budget meeting on Tuesday of this week, staff have had a chance to go revisit the capital program for the IS department, the infrastructure or services department, and have come up with an option for council to consider. It all involves the debentures assigned both to the capital bridge and paving program, as well as the road conversion program. And what the proposal is to potentially eliminate 5.44, almost $1 million from the proposed $11.55 million contained in the budget. And how that would be done would be to defer essentially a number of programming from the capital bridge and culvert program. I think I should make an overarching statement here to say the proposals here, I want to be clear to council, we don't see these pauses, we'll call it. Like if we were to pause, say, the hot mix paving program, it is not like things are going to fall apart tomorrow. I think that's an important piece here. So I think, staff are certainly comfortable. And I think what we were trying to demonstrate is there is work that needs to happen. So you will see these projects return. I think that's something we have to wrestle with and figure out going forward. But I think, it's obviously there's not enough funding for all of the needs that we have before us. I think that's an important piece, as these are generally levy supported. There is not opportunity to leverage water or sewer reserves, for example. So we do rely on whether it be levy through new levy, through the infrastructure reserve, or whether we leverage the Canadian Community Building Fund, which is formerly gas tax funding, or OCIF injections from the province. So that's really the only sources of income for these programs. And those are our pinch points, quite frankly. So to say all of that, if we were looking to prioritize what is contained in the current capital, I think what staff are recommending is to forego the pedestrian conversion of Peel Street. We would defer Cox Creek Road engineering. We would defer the low-level bridge engineering. We would defer the Pine Creek Road engineering and Union Street rehabilitation culvert. Those would all be deferred. Floridale Road is funded, and Greenhouse Road was funded previously last year. Now, I appreciate that of the Greenhouse Road funding, about $720,000 was debenture funded and approved last year. So that is something for council to consider as well. But moving down into the hot mix resurfacing program, it would be proposed by staff to defer the entire program this year and to reallocate the $850,000 that is in there and contain both 645,000 infrastructure reserve and 205,000 in new levy. The thinking from staff's perspective is if we look from a priority perspective based on condition, we have a problem with Oriole Parkway's culvert right now. We would see that to be the highest priority. And we would suggest that council would reallocate the funding from the hot mix paving and reassign that to the Oriole Parkway, and then we could release a tender this year to move forward on that. That's the proposal. Further on the debenture side of things, the road conversion program, the entire cost to convert Ryder Road is shown in the debenture column at $460,000. The intent there would be for staff to defer the conversion of Ryder Road. We have funded the final lift of asphalt from the conversion that occurred last year on Vance Road, and that is funded here in this, and you can see there's the $90,000 assigned for that. So the plan there would be for staff to put a tender on the street for surface treatment, and we would pick up that last lift for Vance Road, and that would complete the conversion of at least Vance Road. And it would be funded, as council's aware, in the operating budget. There is enough funding in that this year to act on a program for surface treatment. And we had paused that the year before as there wasn't funding available. So with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions council may have.
Councillor Burgess.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, through you to Director Poubet. You mentioned forego Peel Street Bridge. If council's wishes were to remove the bridge and make a final decision on that, is that a project we would look at doing this year to save money on like the 100,000 for netting? And then would that be another $1 million put in as debenture to complete that project?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Burgess, I guess it's not contemplated as a work plan for this year to revisit the Peel Street Bridge. Certainly, that's something that could be a council's wish to do that. We would obviously have to assign resourcing for that. We would envision it would be appropriate to have further public engagement through that process. That obviously takes some time and energy. So I think I can't give you a direct answer on what that looks like right now, but obviously it would involve some resourcing. We'd have to look at how we would do that. And look to see how we, assign staff time for that. But it's certainly something that council could look to move forward with. And if they'd like, we could certainly come back with what we would envision a plan and maybe a bit of a time frame associated with that.
Other questions? Councillor Schwint.
So I appreciate the work you went through trying to find savings and deferrals. I am struggling a little bit with the hot mix resurfacing program, completely deferring that. How much more expensive is it to maintain the roads without that resurfacing?
Yeah, few Mayor Shantz to Councillor Schwint. So in an ideal world, everything's funded and we're doing everything. Appreciate that. I think that, the risk is higher if we're looking at either the capital bridge program this year or the hot mix repaving program. I think it's important for this council to understand that in the past, it has been a bit of what I'll call a slip and slide between both programs. There have been at times where we've certainly funded more in the capital bridge program and less in the hot mix. And there have been times here where we've done the opposite and funded more in the hot mix and less in the capital bridge program. So it does really boil down to condition and priority as they come up. So I think staff are comfortable. It's not ideal. Again, we would prefer obviously to do everything that's here, but I think, from a priority perspective, we don't see by pausing Mary Hill Road, Side Road 16 and Spitzig, that is going to cost the township any more money if we do that next year. We don't see that it's in that state right now.
Councillor Bryant and then Councillor Burgess.
Thank you. You mentioned you're pulling Ryder Road out of this list. How bad is that road currently? I know it's gravel, but how heavily traveled is it, and is it in really bad shape?
through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Bryant. So it's not a condition determination on Ryder. It was simply the fact that it's a gravel road that's one of the furthest locations away from Township's operations yard. That's really the driving factor for all of those road conversions out in that area. So not an issue really for Ryder, other than we obviously have to attend with grader. We still have Cramp Road out in the Breslau area. So there's a few roads still yet to remove or convert to Service Street to really get that the benefit that we're looking for with not having to travel so far with some of our grader equipment. So really no danger as far as condition or anything like that. It's not on the radar to do a resurfacing this year either. So it would just sit and we would have to attend to it from a maintenance operations perspective.
Thank you.
Councillor Burgess.
Through you, Mayor Shantz. I'm jumping down to the bottom. I don't know if you're gonna touch on that or if I should just go ahead. The debenture part. Just question there to Mr. Fairweather, I'm gonna say. So if I'm looking at these numbers here, you're implying with the debt we're taking on this year, even with the decrease, we're looking at a 3 1/3 tax increase on the general levy next year?
Through the mayor, that's correct. That number is assuming the Elmira downtown would be a interest only, loan arrangement similar to Atlantic Credit, where we would only pay the interest because of the short term frame. So if you do that, yeah, we'd be incurring about 476,000 on the tax base. There's 102 that would be incurred on the sanitary sewer rates on that, but the tax impact would be about 3.33.
Do you think the Elmira downtown core will be for a couple of years, or we hope it is pretty short, a year or less?
I can't answer that. Deanna may be able to talk to you on that.
Yeah, we expect it to be very quick. It would just be to acquire properties and then sell them again through RFP, so 2 years.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, Director Fairweather there, the wastewater, 103,000, you're not including that in our operating levy increase. Just for clarity on the wastewater and water there, that there's no general levy coming into that area at all or any reserves being pulled or anything. That's a whole separate department that's solely funded by those fees.
Through the mayor, the water and wastewater are a rates-based budget, so there's no funding from the tax base towards that budget.
So just for clarity, even like the revenue clerk that we were looking to hire and all that, that's all funded by that area and not through the levy?
2/3.
Yeah, the 2/3 or thirds, yeah.
Through the mayor, the revenue clerk position is funded, it's split because it'd be a small portion that would be used for tax billing on that. So the other 2/3 of the time would be in the water and wastewater area.
Other questions? Mr. Poupey, after the last meeting, I had asked you about a report that was done and apparently it was in 2014, I guess, just before I took office. I must have been here for that meeting because I do recall it. Talking about the annual or actually the infrastructure deficit in general. Can you just speak to that a little bit?
Sure, through you, Mayor,
You can-
Mayor Shantz, to the rest of council. So we're going back in time, yeah, about 2014, I think was the first foray into our asset management reporting. We were coming up to another reporting cycle here in June of this year. We will have legislative to report on all of the township's assets. So it's important to understand the difference. In 2014, it were core assets. We did comply in 2022 with reporting again on our core assets. We did that in-house though in 2022. So unfortunately, we were not able to kind of get some of the data that came from 2014. That will be different going into this year. So you will be able to see some metrics like this. But essentially in 2014, I think the story is at the time they looked at core assets, that would be your roads, bridges, culverts, and storm sewer infrastructure. So just for that alone, we needed to increase taxes in one given year to meet a sustainable level of funding to the tune of about 65.9%, I believe was the number. We were deficient. So at the time, again, a snapshot in time, and that's important to understand too, asset management plans fluctuate month to month potentially. Like, so, you know, we got to be very careful sometimes when we're comparing But in this instance, that wasn't realistic, obviously. So there was a more realistic approach that involved assigning 4.33% annually for just that infrastructure, just that four pieces. It negates everything else we do with the levy dollars that do come into the township, but just for those core pieces of infrastructure for a 15-year period to become sustainable on that funding level. At the time, I think we were just north of about $2 million that we were injecting in those four assets classes, but then it was required to be about 8 million. So that's where you get it. It was around 5 point something million. I think that we were deficient annually. Funding levels have changed, but I think the story is somewhat similar. You know, we continue to struggle with the appropriate funding levels for a sustainable infrastructure. But again, I think what we need to, you know, I don't want to paint a doom and gloom picture. That's not the intent here. I think the important piece is getting data and understanding the data and then trying to work towards a solution. And I think the important piece is that now we are legislated to understand the assets we own, what that looks like. That's very important and incredibly necessary, I would say, to get the big picture. We keep looking at just core, we forget some of the other things. I think it's important to understand that a community is not just roads and bridges. A community is everything, right? For good communities like we have in Woolwich, you need servicing for all things. So we do need to look at them equally as important. I don't think one should govern over another, whether it's hard or soft, it doesn't matter. I think it is important. And that's why I think coming with a fulsome picture of all the assets will be a really eye-opening experience for council and staff alike. And that will be something that obviously we need to live and breathe going forward. But point being, everything helps. And you know, there is opportunity here. We are asking at the 8.7 level. That's not enough still. But I think to same message in 2014, what is something that we can move towards? Is there an additional percent here or there that can start to move, you know, towards building up some of these things? I think pausing in certain areas is okay to do, provided that you have a plan forward and it's not a simply pause forever. I think those things are okay to do as well. So I think that's what I would sort of take away from what we reviewed today on the 2014 data that we had.
Thank you. Councillor Schmidt.
We've seen lots of fluctuations last year in the planning side of things from the province. Do they fluctuate on programs at all for capital projects like roads and bridges that all partway through the year they'll announce opportunities? And if that ever happens, how do we, I guess, account for that or take advantage of that if it's not in the budget today? Is there a methodology to do our portion later, or how do you seize those opportunities?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, I apologize, Councillor Schwinn. Just so speaking just about with development occurring and some of those, sorry, I apologize.
Sorry, if the province says townships can apply for $1 million for road improvements, they know there's an infrastructure deficit. We don't find out about the program until July, and you have to apply in August. But we've done our budget today, and you've got no matching funds or 10% cost share in your budget. How can you take advantage of that?
So in the past, I can say that so through you, Mayor Shantz, Councillor Schwinn, in the past, you know, applications have come on at different times. Certainly council endorsed. We look to apply. It takes time. There's usually windows assigned to funding. Contained in this year's budget, important to note too, is we did receive funding from, I believe it was ICIP funding. So it was a joint funding initiative between both the province and the federal government, and they have funded us on the Weigel Drain project. So we had identified some deficiencies and needs within the Weigel Drain system. We were successful in receiving, it's about 73.3% funding to us. So the long-winded way of saying, typically they don't require you to spend it the same year. They give you long windows, so you're able to address that through future budgets. We had received this, I believe, a couple of years ago, if I'm correct, and for some reasons, resourcing, other priorities, we haven't been able to execute yet. But the time frame for which to spend that money is big enough that we are able to address it. We are not going to look gift horse in the mouth, so to speak. We certainly will make sure we spend the grant allocation dollars that we do receive, and we will continue obviously to fill out applications for funding. But there usually is windows, and we're able to accommodate that in future years.
Thanks, that helps me understand better.
So if there was a project that came up, for example, you're saying we would work it out in future budgets, but that would be something that I guess we could debenture, or it would come back to council, I guess, is my, so at the time of the funding application or a successful
Mhm.
receipt of it, it would come to council.
That's correct. Another case in point would be the Glasgow Street Bridge rehabilitation. That was a grant money that we were able to realize and put that in a future budget and fund. And of course, in this case, I think the township's only responsible for about 16.7%, which is, incredible to be able to
Yeah.
do that kind of stuff.
For sure. Mr. Brennan?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, to council, I think Mr. Poupey would also agree that over the years, funding applications sometimes are looking to fund projects that are in our future capital. So they open up funding programs that will accelerate a future project, but there's also equally funding projects that align perfectly with what we have in our capital budget. So it's not that we're not able to take advantage of funding mid-year if funding programs align perfectly with what we've already established in our capital budget. We've been able to do that as well. So it doesn't just have to be things for the future that we hope to align with. It can be within the existing capital budget.
Other questions on this piece? No? Okay, thank you. Now we'll go back to recreation. Director MacArthur.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor, to council. So I'll start off and then just kind of speak generally in terms of the capital plan for our department, and then Mr. Vanderhoff can speak to some particular projects. But so I'd start off to say that the initial capital budget that we presented was $2 million, or just under $2 million. That would oversee asset renewal maintenance for 37 buildings and 36 parks that are municipally owned, not just recreation, as we identified before. I wanted to point out, like I asked, we only have 2 funding sources, so we don't have any funding through the general levy, but we do rely on infrastructure reserve, the building reserve, and CCBI F funding, which was, as he noted, was formerly the gas tax. So I think initially for infrastructure reserve, we advocated for $750,000 towards projects based on conversation that council had the previous night. We did go back and look at some projects and what we could scope down to support kind of the cause of trying to free up some infrastructure reserve. So Thomas and his team looked through and kind of reduced the scope. We were could provide, based on our recommendations, open to council's deliberation, of course, but a reduction of 1/3 of our infrastructure reserve request down to 200, or a reduction of $260,000. So with that, I'll let Thomas speak to if you have any questions on the particular projects that we have reduced or changed in scope.
Any questions? Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. I'm looking at the chart you've got in here, and you've got Breslau getting reduced for their field house and their porch library entrance. I'd like to see that funding stay at the full level. Breslau, how do I put this politely? Seems to be left out a lot of times when we're doing things. There'll be more money spent on the north or western end of the township, Elmira, St. Jacobs, and Breslau is feeling left out. And I really feel we need to complete those projects for Breslau to make their fields useful and make the residents feel they are getting something without being left out on a regular basis.
Okay. Councillor Grant.
Thank you. Through you, the rest of council. I would concur with Councillor Bryant. I would like to see the field house stay, if simply because we've already established that the community center there is quite thriving. With the addition of the splash pad there, I feel that this is only going to grow. So I know the field house in particular has been a sore subject for many residents there, and it's been on our books for a while. So yeah, I would just concur that I would want to see that stay.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Schwint.
I would have to support that as well. The other one that I believe is missing somewhat on the list is the WMC. I'm still not comfortable with a full costing there. Wondering if that work plan could be rejigged. I don't know if other counselors have been at the WMC. I played hockey there last night. I do see the need for repairs and maintenance. I'm just wondering, can we be more aggressive with our RFPs to try and cut that back a little bit?
Mr. Vanderhoff.
Through you, Mayor Shantz, I'll jump in just before we get too far. Just with regards to Breslau, so the plans for next year are really just planning stages. Engineering works, getting designated substance audits completed, getting the design work for the porch replacement and washroom installation. So nothing actually happening next year. And I'm fairly confident that we can still get the planning done that's necessary for us to move forward with that work in 2025. And then on Walsh Memorial Center flooring, this is, we actually received a third quote today too. So 3 competitive quotes, obviously not going through the formal tender process yet, but I want council to know that we do seek pricing before we bring this budget before you. And what we've presented is in line with 3 different installers and 3 different products that would be required for the facility.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Cadeau and then Counselor Bryant.
Thanks, Mayor. It should be quick. I just note with the porch, library entrance and exterior, we're actually increasing the budget on that by $10,000. So I wanted to confirm that was the case. And why are we seeing that increase?
Through you, Mayor Shantz. So we reduced, what we can do, I've proposed is we can just combine those items for a total of, I believe, just 40. We can combine those 2 items and drop the capital down to 40 for both. And I still think we can get the necessary work done next year to move forward with those projects in 2025. So we've got field house is 85 and the porch is 30. Or what's that, 115?
Yeah. And are you suggesting it would be then 115 minus 40?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Counselor Bryant.
So all this work can be done for that smaller amount of money?
Yeah, we won't be able to do as much planning for the field house, but I think that the approach that we'll take is go a design build route in 2025, which requires a little bit less engineering. And then the entranceway as well too. I think we can get the necessary planning work done there as well too. Sorry, we originally had the field house in to fully fund the project for 2024. And as we went through the budget process, as staff, realized that we didn't have the funding there to support doing it in 2024. And so that's why we scoped it down. And the intent was to carry over some funding into 2025, bridge the gap in 2025, and complete both the projects. So really, by scoping it down in 2024, what we're doing is, 2025 is we're going to need to fund more of that project if we want that, if council would like to see that happen.
I would say I would like to see it completed because, as I said, the community has been sitting and waiting for projects to be done for a number of years. So I don't want to see them continually waiting, especially with the splash pad going in this June. They're going to need these facilities. So I think we need to move forward with this project.
Anything else? I have a question because we're talking about the Peel Street Bridge again and not quite sure where that discussion's going to go. And I'll just give you a heads up. You can contemplate it and maybe answer it later. So if we were to put a passive park in Winterburn and or I'm not sure what where the properties go, but a trail down around the river and sort of a walking place for the people in Winterburn. Roughly, what would it cost to do that, and is that a feasible thing? I know I'm putting you on the spot, so you don't have to answer it now, but before the night's out, that, do you want to ponder?
Yeah, I can weigh in, I guess, to start, and I'm sure IAS would like to comment as well too. There is a trail.
Say no.
There is an existing trail along the river on the, I'm not sure what side that would be, the east side or the southeast side, that runs along the river there. It is on private property, so that's just one of our many partnerships with landowners that allow for that trail to be there. We've looked at Winterburn as well too, in terms of what township property we own. It's very limited in Winterburn, and that's the reason why years ago, before my time, we partnered to help fund the playground that's at the public school in town there. So not necessarily specific to the Peel Street Bridge, but if there was a desire for additional parkland in Winterburn, that would need to come through a land purchase. And we're hoping that the master plan that's going to be before council within the next couple months will give us some direction there, and I'm sure it will. It will probably, that conclusion may be made through that master plan.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay. Oh, Councillor Cadeau.
Not related to that, but back on the arenas, I know that we have removed the flooring from the St. Jacobs Arena. I definitely support that removal, having been there last night and scoping it out, and I think that it's quite functional and will remain functional. I'm happy to see that we are still addressing some of the accessibility concerns, especially with the bathrooms and most certainly the dehumidifiers. If we can maybe go back to Councillor Schwin's comment about the WMC. An ounce of prevention is better than a pound of the cure, right? If we keep waiting, it's probably going to be to a point where we're going to have to do much more work in there, and that would be my concern.
I'm not for deferring it. I'm just trying to do this as efficiently as possible. And yeah, trying to get the best possible price on that one. Sticker shock scared me.
Other questions? Councillor Grant.
Thank you. Through you to Director MacArthur or even Thomas. I'm just wondering about the Maryhill playground, because it seems like it was not put in that long ago. So I'm just kind of inquiring as to why we're doing a playground replacement, because I think this would be the second time it's been replaced. Yeah.
Through your Mayor Shots to council. So there's an original structure in the playground that was installed in 1999, and then a second piece that it was installed, I believe, in the mid 2000s. That's our only playground as well too, that it almost has a pea stone surface. It's not very forgiving, and it does not meet our CSA standards that we're supposed to be following. So that's something we would address, as well as adding some accessibility features that or amenities that address accessibility as well too.
Okay, so this would be mostly like removing the pea stones so that we have better accessibility. I'm guessing less so than the actual playground itself being replaced.
So what we have in the budget is a replacement of the playground as well.
Okay.
Sorry, CCBC.
Madam Mayor, that's the former gas tax, so that funding has been allocated between the two departments.
Okay, so that's not coming, that's funded by, I guess, funds that are coming in from that. Councillor Grant.
Thank you. This is just a small comment too about that particular playground, as I happen to know that a lot of children leave their toy trucks there specifically to dig with the pea stones. So I don't know if just as a little pin there to maybe provide some sort of sandbox type enrichment, because it seems to be a popular destinations for those trucks to go to.
Okay, Thomas is
Noted.
nodding. Okay, Mr. Brenneman is reminding me that if we're gonna move forward and make some progress here, we should probably make some motions and some decisions on some of these things. So Um, is council ready to look at this report and make some hard recommendations on it, or do you still want to go through the rest of it and then try to tackle it piece by piece after that? Councillor Grant?
Through you to the council, as it stands with the RCS proposed changes, I'm fairly comfortable with them. I'm just kind of throwing it out there for the rest of council if there's any particular items on there that we want to discuss, but as this stands, I'm quite comfortable with where we are.
Councillor Bryant and then Cadeau.
I am comfortable, I can't even talk tonight. I am comfortable with this as long as we are including the Breslaw component to make sure it gets done.
Sorry, yes, I should have clarified
Yeah.
that was part of it. Yeah.
So ensuring that the build happens in 25.
Yeah.
Councillor Cadeau?
Just confirming then, that's $80,000 that we're earmarking for the Breslaw Community Center. Is that my assumption?
Through you, Mayor Sean, so 80 for both projects, the field house and the front entrance washroom and porch.
I would motion to approve that then.
So approve the capital. Councillor Bryant, seconded by Councillor Bryant. Just 1 second.
So we motion.
Yeah. Can you give us a verbal at least?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Shantz. I'm just actually curious if I have it correct. So is it as shown on the revised agenda this afternoon? Or is it further amended?
I think it's as shown, at least what I understand is as shown here. And I think there was also, sorry, this is as amended?
Amending it to show the Breslaw getting 8,000, which is what Thomas just said.
Specials.
That's what's in here.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what's in here, but I think the caveat that I heard from 2 or maybe 3 of you is that to ensure that the build happens in 2025. I'm not sure how we want to word that. Is that part of the motion? Or
Maybe through you, Mayor, back to rec staff. The intention would be there. It's more of the planning side of things that we're going to be doing. It would still come before council in the form of budget next year, and we would have to make those determinations then, right?
it should. So do you have a wording for that?
Yes, through you, Mayor Shantz. If I've understood council correctly, it's that council approve the revised recreation and community services capital budget as shown on the revised agenda and ensure that the project, I guess Breslaw projects are finished in 2025.
Did we want to say subject to?
Oh, subject to 2025 budget approval?
Much more comfortable with that.
Councillor Schwint.
I'm a little bit torn on this motion because I look at the proposed budget for RCS and I am good with it in principle, but I haven't seen the total numbers yet. And when we go through each department, if we're still at a point where the bottom line figure doesn't work, we may have to go back and find some more changes. I'm really worried about passing a motion or supporting a motion like this right now. I'm not quite ready to vote in favor of it. Having said that, it's not that I want to come back and revisit this if that bottom line comes through an acceptable format.
Councillor Cadeau.
If I can, a point of clarification. I mean, if we take this section and motion to approve it, will we still have to approve the final budget in its entirety through motion?
The final budget will be approved February 12th.
So to your point, if we're making it into the wee hours of tonight and we're still concerned about the progress that we made, doesn't mean that we can't come back and make changes after the fact.
Is that?
So through you, Mayor Shantz, if you were passing a resolution to accept this capital budget as revised, if you come back later tonight and you want to make further changes, I would suggest a motion to reconsider, but that is something you can do. Oh. But Mr. Brenneman, I think, has some other comments.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, just through you to Councillor Cadeau's question. We would like to leave here tonight with clear direction so the final report can be produced. We wouldn't want any outstanding issues to say, oh, we might reconsider this on the final budget night. I mean, that's possible, right? It's not to say that that couldn't happen. But really, this being the final budget night is to get clear direction from council so that the actual final budget report, related levy expenditures, et cetera, can come back to you on February the 12th.
Councillor Brown?
Can we hold off voting on this till we go through the rest of the departments and then come back and do the final vote on this particular item? Does that make
Who-
sense for
Who's
Councilor
gonna keep,
Flint?
who's gonna keep track of those things?
If you want, I can keep track of those motions,
That would be
Madam
wonderful. Thank you. Okay, is everyone okay with that? Yeah, we'll say so. Okay, then let's move on to the fire training officer hours, which was the other report we had asked, and I'll call on Deputy Chief Eveson or Chief Aldis.
Evening, through you, Mayor, to council. So the graphs that were submitted through your council package earlier. The first one is the training officer course hours and the requirements for each of the services we provide. So these services are laid out in the enabling and establishment bylaw. This doesn't even cover all, and this is just the most important ones or the most commonly used ones. So you'll see through the graph, NFPA 1001 firefighter, that's your basic firefighter requirements. That requires 110 hours of instruction and then approximately 25 hours after that, year by year, to maintain those skills through a matrix we've set up through our standard operating guidelines. And then working out from there, some of the common ones are hazardous materials. They're about 20 hours. Medical first responder, which makes up quite an abundance of our calls. That's a 40-hour course to be an emergency first responder. So that covers your CPR, defib, defibrillation, and first aid protocols. And then 10 hours year by year after that to maintain your certification and avoid skills fade. And then as you can see, auto extrication, obviously that's our most people call it the jaws of life. It's the most commonly known use. Ice water rescue with all the bodies of water in the area, and you can see the correlation of the hours. And you'll note at the bottom it says hours reflect in class. That's in class training hours, so person to person. That's where the training officer is boots on the ground in a classroom, instructing the students. That's not to say, where there's a blended model or a hybrid model where there's online components, and that's usually self-directed. But they do have, learners do have questions, and a training officer would have to make them. So, and it's hard to quantify the hours because it depends on the group you have. And then especially new initiatives. So moving forward and really modernizing the fire service in Woolwich requires things like Blue Card Command, which is an incident management system developed by the Brunicinis in the States. Nozzle forward, which is a technique of moving hoses and stuff through buildings efficiently for the best outcomes. And then obviously, as you know, we acquired a drone. So drone operations through federal regulation and just safety operations, search and rescue. Like it says, online, blended, and in person. So those are three delivery methods. On blended is the most common. That's the cross between the online and classroom settings. And not all options are available for every course. At some capacity, the training officer is going to be required to be a part of most of these courses, or all these courses to some capacity, whether it's coaching, answering questions, course delivery, course preparation, grading, and remediation should they need it. And again, these are approximate numbers, and it could vary based on the student body and the needs they might have. Is there any questions on that first graph before I move on?
Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to Deputy Chief Easton. So when I'm looking at this, then is my understanding that in order to bring up our fleet of firefighters, or complement, I should call them, not fleet, they're not trucks, our complement of firefighters, you know, up to the legislative training that they need, you know, all of the new recruits, for instance, this training officer is going to be required to spend 110 hours bringing all of our new recruits up to those training standards as legislated. Is that correct?
Correct. So to acquire your NFPA 1001 firefighter certification, so there's two parts, there's a 1 and a 2, but that's all combined into the one certification. It's 110 hours of training, and that encompasses, you know, search and rescue, truck maintenance, speaking on the radio, donning and doffing of your SCBA, your PPE maintenance of the PPE. It basically encompasses everything that a firefighter might come across and packs it into like I don't want to say a crash course, but a course that covers all the primary bases of being a firefighter.
How many classes would you do? Like how many recruit classes are there in a year? I think you answered that last time. but-
Typically start in January, and the first component's done by June, and that's achieved through written testing and practical examinations. And then part 2 starts, and that includes your hazmat and operations, and that's usually completed. We aim to have it done by September or October, towards the end of the year. So in 1 year, you're giving them the basic necessities to be a firefighter.
But all the new recruits are together in one class?
That's correct.
Councillor Burgess and then Councillor Bryant.
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to the Deputy Chief, just for clarity, which of these are the new courses for the new certification the firefighters need to go through? Like how many extra hours are the trainer being put in now compared to what was being done before? If that makes sense.
All right, through you, Mayor. Are you speaking before the legislated certification? So NFPA was what they adopted as per written in 343, or what the regulation 343 dash. I can't think of the actual number, but these NFPA certifications are what they adopted. So before that, it was kind of like, if you want to do it, go ahead. We recommend it. However, it's not a illegal component of the fire service. Now they've made all of these the legal component. So if you want to do any of these on a fire ground or in the fire service, you have to have the certification in order to operate at that capacity.
So when you're listing 110 hours there for recruit training and NFPA 1001, prior to these new certifications, you would have put in less hours for recruit training?
No, if you're following the 1001, which is basically the standard without actually saying it was the standard, it was loosely based on like Ontario's fighter certification, which is what it used to be called, was based off of NFPA 1001, but it had its own nuances to it. Now it follows that, and the 110 hours is the minimum recommended hours. I think we go above and beyond that into the 140, 160 range, just to make sure that they're ready to be in these situations.
Councillor
Just to add
Brown.
a little bit to that, I actually, to answer Council Burgess's question through Madam Mayor is, previously, before the NFPA was mandatory, we did a recruit training. It was like Deputy Easton said, it was loosely based on it, but there was no certification to it. It wasn't exactly what it is. So this course now has completely changed 360 degrees. It's completely different than what it was before, so the amount of time that we're taking now to do this is probably twice what it used to be before.
Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Through you to the chief or the deputy chief. Do they take all these courses in 1 year? Because I noticed there's a fire officer 1 and a fire officer 2 and an instructor 1 and an instructor 2.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Bryant. No, those, so I've highlighted them in the different color, the purple, to show firefighter career progression. So the recruit training are the ones indicated in the green. And that's typically completed in the first year. And then the purple highlights firefighter career progression. So as you move through your career with Woolwich Fire Department, or any fire department rather, typically you get into the more specialized rescues, which is your water rescue, rope rescue, if that's a service that the city provides, and then fire instructor 1, fire officer 1, and so on and so forth. So that it was shown that way just so that although it's not a part of the recruit component, it is in the training officer's portfolio, because they are going to have to administer these courses to our already existing staff.
Right, so they may take them over the course of 1, 2, 3 years. It's not something you have to complete in a 1-year cycle.
No, and so, the fire officer is only required of our supervisors, so our captains and lieutenants, should we choose to have lieutenants, and our senior officer command team. So if they would like to progress to the rank of officer and be the commanding person on scene or of an emergency situation, then they do need to have fire officer 1 and fire officer 2.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think what I'd like to understand, there's 14 courses listed here, all with varying hours that are attached to them. Does the training officer provide the training for all 14 of these?
Potentially, yes. If the resources aren't there for it to be taught through maybe a certified training officer that we have on staff, the training officer would be the one responsible for instructing these courses. So the NFPA has a rule where it says if you're to teach or instruct one of these disciplines, you have to have it yourself and be a certified fire instructor.
To add a bit of context to that for Madam Mayor, the Officer 1, Officer 2 courses there, and our pump ops courses and the hazmat courses are being offered through our joint training with the neighboring municipalities. So the training officer would be responsible for helping to teach those courses through there. And if we ran these internally, then he would be responsible for running them solely for us, if that was the case.
But these 14 courses are being offered every year.
No, Madam Mayor, they'd be offered as needed, but it just gives you the context of the type of hours that he would have to potentially put in.
Thank you. Councillor Schwint, did you be? Councillor Cadeau.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to the fire staff. This is great, and I think it really paints the picture of the types of training that we're going to need. I think that where I'm struggling is it doesn't really identify the outstanding need of our current complement of officers. You know, of all of those recruits, I assume that they're going to have to take the 1001 training, but our entire complement isn't going to have to take that. I look at some of these other ones like the ice water rescue, and I see that 40 hours of it are the career progression. So I guess the question that stems from all of this is, do we need to look at those career progression training programs as being legislated, or is that legislation really targeting more the recruit training? And where I'm going with this, if we are under a crunch with a training officer to comply with legislation, how are we going to prioritize the level of training that we're delivering so that we are getting the most bang for the buck?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Cadeau. So recruit training is just a small portion of it. Officer development is huge. Our joint training committee offered, first time, just last weekend, they finished up our Officer One course. In Woolwich alone, we had 6 candidates in there, which is the most we could get in, and we turned away a lot that needed, because we're looking at, as you well know, Chief Kelly retired. Through that, we have to look at moving people up and moving them around and getting them up and running. Officer One and Instructor One are legislated under mandatory certification. If you're gonna be an officer on the front line, going into a hazardous building, you have to have these certifications. And the unfortunate part is Officer One, you can't get it without Instructor One. So they kind of hold you hostage, but it's part and parcel, they go together, so they have to be done. So we are running them currently to try and get people up. Like I said, we had 6 in there now that were in demand to go. And we probably had another 24 firefighters that are interested in moving up and taking these courses in the future. So the need is huge to get those in for our people.
Councillor Schwint.
I think there's gonna be a theme tonight on, when we're looking at positions, just wondering if we have to, I guess, make accommodations because of budget and defer a new position, and reprofile existing jobs. I guess put it this way, if the chief and deputy chief had to take on more training responsibilities, putting on these courses, what would you have to defer on your other work plans in order to accommodate more teaching and training?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Swint, that idea would definitely not be a good one. You would be adding basically 22 hours or 20 hours onto our busy schedules as it is right now. That type of event would, especially if it's uncompensated, it wouldn't just never happen. That whole concept of even adding it in would lead to burnout, high stress, medical leave, and time-sensitive projects either being delayed or not done. To give you context of kind of what we do in our office every day. So Director Freeze talks about planning operations, all the plans that come through, the site plans and all these big projects that are coming up. Every one of those comes into the fire department for review or comment. Right now, I'm constantly getting harassed by her planners because I'm not getting them done in time. I get emails on the day it's supposed to be done and say, I need this by the end of the day. So it's not getting done right now, and it's just continuing to get worse. With the building department, there's special inspections that need to be done. So our commercial cooking units and any of our complex buildings, and the only person certified to do that for the fire department is me. So a lot of those inspections and stuff come up quickly. They need to be done, and I have to be able to get to them, or those projects aren't going to go through. With infrastructure services, Director Poupey talked about the asset management plan. That dropped into our laps this year. We had to do that. Any infrastructure project that goes through, we look at it. We approve it because we have to look at temporary hydrants, how we have to change response times and directions into that, how it's going to work. And fire flows for any new hydrants or anything that comes in there. Just 1 second. When it comes to bylaw, we help out with bylaw as well. We deal with our fire related issues because the complaints come through downstairs and they come across. And I'll tell you right now, the majority of our campfire complaints on a Saturday night aren't necessarily for the fire. It's because it's the noise of people partying. But we have to go out and do it. We're mandated to respond to every complaint that we get. So we have to go out and look at them. And we do some joint inspections with them, with some of our community partners. We've gotten calls for do something with Communicare Concepts on the morning, and we have to go do it in the afternoon, and we drop everything and go and do that. Those things happen. We coordinate all our fire station repairs with RCS, so it's 6 stations, and there's a lot of things that need to get fixed and realigned. We assist the clerks and bylaw with licensing applications, and this is especially for fireworks because the fire chief holds, like I hold the authority for 7 jurisdictions, so I have to approve any professional fireworks that's going there, any place where they're sold within the township of Woolwich. Like, we deal with that. For finance, we're trying to stay on top of our invoices and get it done, and there's constantly coming in. We purchase all the equipment, so the safety equipment, operation equipment, fire trucks, everything goes through us and we look after that. We approve and submit any training applications for outside courses. So people just can't sign up on their own. We want to make sure we know who's doing them, how it's happening, so we can keep track of who's got the proper training and who's eligible to actually do that. We're modernizing the fire department with we're doing joint training initiatives. Every fire department in Waterloo Region is participating in Nozzle Forward, which is an intense program that is going to modernize the fire department on the way we handle hose, the way we store hose, the way we place hose on our fire trucks. We're constantly updating all our operating guidelines. A lot of them haven't been updated or even creating new ones since in the 1990s. So we're updating them. We brought the regulating bylaw in and we changed that completely to make it more modernized and up to date so we can easily change it going forward. But now we have to update all our SOGs to make sure that they accompany what's in there. And that's what we've been busy trying to do. Fire safety plans for buildings like Chartwells and our chemical plants. We have to, all those fire safety plans, ones for the rec centers, come across our desks and we have to approve them and they have to be signed. And that's done by the chief fire official. We review fire prevention inspection and orders to make sure that they're correct and we're not going to wind up in court defending ourselves in court. We review all fire calls to make sure that if there's any charges that need to be done or anything that is weird inside them, so we can get it looked after right away. Emergency management activities. So we're part of the exercise planning group. We participate in the exercises just on the weekend with the flooding potential in Westmount Rose. I was out driving around to making sure to see what the ice was doing and making sure we weren't having any hazardous areas in that down in there. And we're participating in doing lots of grant writing. We're constantly with IT trying to, with our related projects, upgrades, there's, so currently we're working with all 7 municipalities to get a new fire software program in place. We have an open door policy. So last night I was trying to work on stuff. I had 5 firefighters come in and wanted to talk to me about things in their lives that weren't going quite right. We get that all the time. They want to talk about career development. They want to know about any EAP needs they have. And these are just a few, but it's lots of what we do in our course of a week.
Anything else?
Do you want to move to the next slide?
Yeah.
It may help answer some questions for you.
Okay.
So through you again, Mayor. So the next slide you see is what we predict being the training officers' primary responsibilities. The breakdown kind of based on what they're already doing. So you see in the graph there, 25% or 35% of that time is recruit, training, and development, because there is so much instructional time. It is resource heavy. It takes up a substantial chunk of that. But then you see the rest of what this individual will be doing. So training material development review. So it needs to be updated to reflect current practices in the fire service, as well as building construction. As we know, building construction is rapidly changed, and our firefighting techniques need to be in line with that, so that our people aren't fighting fires like they did in the 80s, where a house was built with structural lumber instead of lightweight glue board and and then support joint training, fire chiefs, TOs and other training officers and other agencies. So that's working together with our community training group, our regional training group. as well as, training committees and user groups such as West Trek, which is, the Waterloo Region Emergency Services Training and Research Center, in the northern part of Waterloo, I believe. I'm directionally challenged in this area. Education, research and development, and new initiatives. This is a big one. I kind of struggle with the number on this one because things like EVs, so electric vehicles, they're a bit of an enigma. No one really can say 100% what to do with them when they're on fire. Some camps are leave it alone, let it burn out, because it just becomes a car fire, and it's less environmental impact because the water's not running down the road into the sewage system. Other camps like Tesla are like, they say this needs to be put out copious amounts of water, drown it, put it in a box, fill it with water. So just keeping up with that technology, and as it changes, lithium ion batteries, as you saw, Fire Chief Peg from Toronto, they had that fire on the subway system. It's a growing problem. Poorly constructed batteries are coming from other countries, and they're not reliable, they're not tested. And these are all concerns that we're going to have as firefighters and as emergency responders. So that covers that part. Special projects. So that would be special training projects like the nozzle forward development, stuff like that, and emergency incident response. So they'll be responsible for responding to emergencies while on duty, whether it be from St. Jacobs or attending the emergency scene as an incident safety officer. So basically an oversight to make sure that all operations are safe. And each of these integrate and support the other. So they're not mutually exclusive. They're not going to say, okay, 35% of my time has been spent now on recruit training. I have to move to training and material development. They're kind of going to coincide with each other. It was just to reflect what we believe their time allotment will be. And this isn't on a weekly or daily basis. It's more over the course of weeks, months, years, how that's going to kind of all come together. Does anybody have any questions?
So just to give you a little idea on how fast training can change, I got a call today from the Grand River Transit. They have, and they're adding into their fleet, an electric bus. Guess where that electric bus is going to run? Right up through Route 21 that comes up to St. Jacobs, Elmira, back down to Conestoga Mall. So they've already reached out to us about doing some training with St. Jacobs and Elmira on that bus. So now we have to try and get our training officer to coordinate that with those two stations and through the GRT so we can get them in to look after that in case something happens. Like that's how quickly some of the training opportunities come to us. And we need to get ahead of it and before that bus gets on the road and starts coming up here so we know how to deal with it if there's an incident with it.
Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Through you to the chief. How much training is done by each individual little firehouse, like Conestoga, Maryhill, Breslau? How many hours would they put into training their people?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Bryant. Every station does 2 Monday nights a month. So it's roughly 3 hours a night, so 6 hours a month. And that covers the basic stuff that we have to do every year as part of the matrix, and they look after that in-house. But we're trying to use our training officer to get that matrix and all the training platforms set up so they're exactly the same, so that Maryhill and Breslau are training the same way as Elmira, St. Jacobs, Floridale, Conestoga.
Councillor Cadell.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you, just the orange piece of the pie there, training, material development and review. A lot of this material would be developed at OFC, right? And would this be for like marking type stuff? I'm just trying to understand that segment of the graph because it is a quarter of their time.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Cadeau. There is parts of the curriculum that are generated by the Ontario Fire College and through other sources. The trick or the idea is to tailor it to your service. So adult learning concepts are becoming a big thing. All the firefighters within Woolwich Fire are adult learners, and trying to adapt what's a bit of an antiquated curriculum because it doesn't get updated from the province very often. And NFPA, it's every 5 years, making it accessible and inclusive for all our firefighters and their learning capacities is kind of the challenge. So that material is put out with a generalization and like a general understanding that the person should have an understanding of what's being put out. The training officer would be responsible for now making that inclusive and available and equitable for each individual. Some people have a hard time, as you know, learning visually or tactile learners. So adapting these concepts and these lessons into that format for the people that you're teaching would be the primary part of that training material development and review, and making sure that what we have in our stockpile or our cache is relevant and like I said, up to date and compliant with equity and current standards.
And to add to that, Madam Mayor, is some of that will be, as part of the NFPA component, there's a practical testing part and a written testing part. So part of that component is also making sure that gets done. Unfortunately, when we find out what the skill sets are that we have to set up for, it's usually noon on Friday and they're showing up on Saturday. So part of that time is making sure and we have all the stuff that we need to incorporate what we need to have our people pass for the practical component on the next day. And so far we have been running 100%. So we're quite successful at that. So
One follow-up, then that practical assessment would be covered in this orange piece of the pie, and then that $75 fee that goes to the OFC is really just that certification. That it's nothing to do with the training itself. That's what you're proposing or delivering in-house. If it were to be completed at the OFC, we'd be charged about, what is it, $350, for instance, for NFPA 1041, right?
that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? You had one more slide. Did you want to quickly go over? Yeah.
Through you, Mayor, in the interest of time savings here, if you want to just flip to, can we just move to the graph there? So to answer Councillor Cadeau's inquiry from last session, I put together just a very generalized cost analysis of running an RTC. I used the model from one of the ones I found in the course calendar, and it spoke to me more because of the courses that were delivered. These would be like the typical courses that I would see or envision Woolwich delivering because of our facilities. And just to kind of go high level here, instructional hours, that's based on the dates that were set out by this already existing RTC. So 24 hours reflects 3 8-hour days. And that's kind of what I used for the other graph you saw. Course cost of $350 minus the 75, 16 students is the capacity of a course. That's what they set out, minus your training officer's wage and an additional instructor at our current firefighter rate gives you the gross profit. And then you'll see at the bottom, the projected gross profit would be approximately $27,000, give or take. But that doesn't include, as I noted in the other sheet, that doesn't include operational costs that would have to be considered, training props and training aids, anywhere from projectors to office supplies. Again, this wouldn't be an immediate return, ROI on the investment. And if we have any in-house attendees, obviously you're not going to charge your own people $350. It would be the $75 cost. However, if an RTC were to be implemented, that other chart would have to be rejigged to reflect 30 to 35% of their time would be spent managing the RTC.
Mr. Brenneman.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Chief Aldis. Chief, I'm wondering if you could speak to one of the issues that was discussed during staff's deliberations with respect to developing the 2024 budget. We've spent a lot of time through the budget process speaking about what this particular position would do. I'm not sure we've spent sufficient time talking about that currently training is handled by volunteers who also fight fires, who also have full-time jobs. You spoke during staff's budget deliberations about the realities of getting to a point with training, whether the capacity exists amongst our volunteers, whether we'll be able to keep them as training officers, and whether we're hitting a critical point. Could you perhaps speak to that?
So through Madam Mayor to answer, CEO Brenneman. So we'll start with our current training officer to give you an idea. Our current training officer has a full-time job. He has a family. He is a firefighter in one of our busiest stations. So fire calls and meetings are already in his schedule. With that, he puts in numerous hours helping us out. So for recruit training, as an example, was two Monday, Thursday nights when we're running both together parallel to try and get them caught up. So that's 6 hours there plus another 6 hours for meeting night. So he's already pulling 12 hours out of his time. So that's part of the issue with having a part-time person. And he's like every other firefighter I have. They all have full-time jobs. They have businesses, and they have families with lives with children doing stuff. And I mentioned briefly on Tuesday night when we were here, is trainer fatigue is huge right now. The majority of the people that step up to want to teach in all these courses from our volunteers, especially the extra ones to fill in where a training officer can't, are 30-year, 35-year, 40-year-old veterans that we have. And their time is dwindling. And if we don't do something to try and take the pressure away that they seem to assume that I have to go do this, we're going to lose them because burnout is real. And it's right now, currently, the average firefighter in Ontario is for volunteers is running 5 years. So we're doing a quick turnover very quickly. And in Woolwich, we seem to be a little bit higher in that because we're giving them good training. We're giving them a chance to move up. We're giving them good fire trucks and good equipment for them to have to do what they're doing. And that's what they're looking for. So that's real to what this whole is. Part of this training officer, the reason in behind it is there's numerous cases that have come up from the Ministry of Labor and in courts. Meaford is one of the biggest ones in this area. They had an incident at a fire. They had 6 charges brought against them by the Ministry of Labor. 3 of them got dropped, but the other 3 didn't. And they all come back around to speaking of training. Not having the proper training for command, not having the proper training to know when to get out of a fire. It's all in there. And that's basically what it comes down to. If you look at Listowel that happened, and that's not all that long ago, and that's really real close. Firefighters lost their lives in there because they didn't know about the type of construction that's in there. That's training. Like that's real people's lives that we're losing because of the lack of proper training within the fire departments. I was at a conference in November and we had a round table with volunteer firefighter chiefs, and apparently up around Gravenhurst, Bracebridge, and Muskoka Lakes, the Ministry of Labor has already gone in there and started looking at their cancer prevention policies, their PTSD policy. They're looking at their fire halls to make sure that they're safe and up to snuff. And they're looking at their training to see if they're doing everything they can to provide for the safety and well-being of their firefighters. So it's coming around. Has this all been because of the mandatory legislation? I'm gonna say yes. Because now we have to meet benchmarks. We have deadlines that have to be met and we have to do it as quickly and as efficiently as we can. So we don't end up having to do large recruit classes, like we're doing a large one now, but I could just predict it getting larger than that, so.
Thank you, Counselor Grant.
Thank you. Through you to the rest of council. My feelings about the fire training position is that there's two things that we should be taking into mind. One is that I've always believed in treating our volunteers like gold because they are doing things essentially, they're dedicating their time and sacrificing their family time to provide us with the service. My other feeling is, maybe just echoing Chief Aldous, is that when it comes to training, it really is a safety matter. And with poor training comes certain risks. And we're already asking many of our volunteers to take and do something that's already risky and dangerous to their lives. So with that being said, I think they've done more than their due diligence in kind of justifying this position, and I would motion to support it.
Okay, seconded by Counselor Cadeau. Is there further discussion? Counselor Cadeau and then Counselor Schwinn.
Just adding on what Councillor Grant had said, my largest concern is echoing what Chief Aldous had said, stems from the legislation that has been thrusted upon us. We have a duty and obligation to meet those legislative requirements around this training. So while I agree with what Councillor Grant had said in its entirety, I want to also add that there's a legislative component here that we have an obligation to meet. And I think that this is the best way forward. I appreciate the proposed cost recovery. I recognize that it may not be an accurate representation of what's to come here, but it does speak volumes to the fact that there could be some cost savings involved with bringing some of this training in-house and not looking for external providers. I think that if we continue to rely on our volunteers, we will run into that burnout, we will lose people, and we will have to look to other options for training, if not here, other places that may actually be more money than this, and it may cost us more long-term. So there's a lot of reasons here where I think that this is an appropriate thing. And I do support it, and I hope council can get behind this one as well.
Counselor Schwinn.
Just want to clarify, are we taking motions now, or are we gonna wait till the end and see what that bottom number was? I thought we'd said we'd.
Okay, so
Track them.
we're gonna track them. So we'll hold off on that until the end then. Okay. Thank you.
If I can.
Yeah.
I suppose my issue with that is we're gonna be here an awful long time if we
We
can't
will.
start making some decisions on this.
It's true. I'm at your, I'm at council's pleasure. Do you want to vote on this? Now, I've heard two different.
Question for the clerk, do we have a non-binding vote? Just like, we've got consensus, that's great, but I won't support any of these until I know kind of what the bottom line number is.
I don't know how we get to the bottom line though without making some decisions along the way. So I get there. I think what Jeff said earlier was, you know, if we come to the end of the night and something, you know, has changed for us, we can revisit each motion. So we don't have to, and that we can do that straight up. We don't have to have a 2/3 majority to reconsider or anything like that.
So you would have to pass a motion to reconsider, Madam Mayor. And a motion to reconsider has to be passed by someone who was, who voted against it in the first place.
So just so you understand the process if we do take a vote.
It's really awkward. I understand what that does. So first two, I think we had consensus on, we liked the principle. I'd love to see if we have nods ahead to see if we got consensus on this one, but I don't think we do, and I can't support it on principle that way. Because the reconsider has a higher bar to pass.
I suppose we move on to the next item then.
Okay, we'll hold it and see how the night goes. Okay, we've gone through the 4 reports, with, yeah. mhm.
I guess I don't think that should preclude us from seeing if we've got consensus on this one or not.
Consensus.
Consensus from council, do we support it or not? I've heard 2 that strongly support it. Is there 5 that support it or 2?
But I
Putting
heard,
people on the
but I
spot.
heard from you, you're not ready to commit until you hear the whole budget.
I'm not ready to commit to it, but if the bottom line comes in where I can live with the bottom line, I still won't be supporting this position.
Okay,
I will be supporting the RCS and the capital one. But I don't know what other councillors, where they're at. Because if it's 4-1, then we're great.
I think we'll just leave this. I hear what you've said. We'll hold on to this. And I think before we get into each of the positions, I prefer to go to the capital budget. If that's okay with council, and then we'll go on to the other positional pieces, because I think they're 2 very different things. So, and I think I've heard a lot more discussion around capital. So with that, I would move on to the capital budget. And I guess look to council for, we did have reports from IS and RCS on some pieces of the capital budget, but there is some more there. Where does council stand on capital? Councillor
For
Grant.
you, for the rest of council, I'm wondering if Councillor Schwitt, if we would be more comfortable if we went piece by piece and motioned within the capital budget, specific projects and discussion. So
I don't think I want to go through every.
yeah, no, I'm
single
not, but like the big ticket ones that maybe that Director Poupey has identified. See if we agree. Like, I think if we started with Peel Street, we may be able to come to a consensus on what we're doing with that, or I'm just trying to.
Or what if we go by department?
Yeah, that might be, yeah. I'm just trying to figure out
Let's
a
take-
system to make this.
Got it. Why don't we take the easier, if there are any, departments first? Let's try information technology and see where we go with that.
Is there any questions on that?
There weren't.
I don't think.
Okay, fair enough. We didn't have any questions on IT,
Not to come back.
right?
I think it was just
But
infrastructure services and RCS.
that's, okay. But do you want to approve each one? No.
No, because you could support, you could support a larger resolution at the end to support the overall operating capital as amended. Like, once.
Yeah. Is everyone comfortable with all the capital budgets except for RCS and infrastructure services?
And fire would
fire.
be included in the RCS. Yeah.
Right. So. So that leaves IT.
Yes.
Thank you. All right.
I mean, if we want an easy win, we could vote on IT.
Okay, I think we're good with IT. Let's go to fire and equipment replacement, since we've just been talking about fire anyway. Councillor Grant.
Thank you. Through you to Chief Aldous. Can you just remind us again, the 3 vehicles we're looking at, which ones are considered first responding? I think we teased that out last meeting, that what affects our insurance rate is the trucks that are considered first responders, is what affects that kind of insurance rate when it hits 20 years.
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Grant. So the 2006 Amara pumper, which is pre-budget approval. In 2026, it becomes 20 years and a pumper is necessary, like as part of that process. Amara's aerial is aged to the point where it needs to be replaced, so that's a priority as well. Amara's rescue it's been deferred a couple of years as is right now, so that's just on the age and stuff, but that's there again, payment for that isn't gonna come out till 2026, so that's about the way that like they go. The DC funding truck is the pumper for Breslau, and that's solely out of development charges, so it's not a capital project. It's just to let you know that it's gonna be coming, because once it arrives, it comes into our fleet management process, so.
Counselor Schwint.
So has that one been approved already then? Is that what I'm hearing, the Breslau one? Or how's that approval happened?
That's a very good question. And that was approved through the DC money. I'm gonna assume that once we go out for RFP, it comes back for approval from council as to what the total value of that truck is. Maybe Director Fairweather could come weigh in on that, but I'm assuming that's what's gonna happen, just like all the trucks, when we go out for purchase, they come back once we settle on a value to be approved by council.
Director Fairweather, did you want to jump in?
My understanding is the truck that's shown in 2026 to be in the budget is one that is contained within the development charge background study. And as we go through the update, it will probably show up again in the background study. And as the chief's indicated, he would be coming to council for approval to purchase that at some point. But right now that it's in the DC study, but it hasn't been in a budget.
Mr. Poupey.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Schultz. And just for a point of clarity, when we are going through development charges background studies, there are a number of fleet rolling stock that's included, along with all sorts of other projects. So it's important we identify anything attributable to growth. We put in the DC background study. We put our best efforts into what we think that cost is going to be, but I just want council to understand that the reconciliation happens when we go through another amendment or update to the background study. So even if development charges, for example, was light, we'll say, or on the heavy side, there's a reconciliation that happens, but it is captured likely as 100% for on growth. So again, no tax implications for the purchase of this particular vehicle or any vehicle that's contained wholly within the development charges background study.
Does that answer your question?
90%. So when we approve a background study, we're approving the purchase of a vehicle in principle with the amount to be determined. Finalized, sorry.
Right, there's an estimate put in that background study for that vehicle.
But procurement will still require us to come forward to council for
All of us.
award, right?
Yeah.
And purchase.
And just a quick question. We have a 2015 Dodge pickup quad truck. What is the purpose of that particular vehicle? Like, what is it used for?
Through council to Councillor Bryant. Currently, it is being used for the transport the side-by-side that we bought last year.
Thank you.
Councillor Burgess.
You, Mayor Shantz, just to follow up on that question. Given the extra costs needed to turn the truck into a fire truck with the lights and whatnot, that's a large extra cost there. Is there any way we can drag out that truck a bit longer? 2015 is not that old. I just bought a 2015 van.
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Burgess, it is on the the fleet management study, but it has already been deferred by a year. The possibility of deferring it out again for another year is possible. It'll just keep reoccurring in budget to get it replaced.
Is there a lot of clicks on it, or is it just, why are we deciding to do it now versus waiting?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Swint, Burgess, just a few years ago, we had to basically rebuild the entire front end of the truck because it wasn't under warranty from Dodge, and we're still chasing a ghost inside it. So it's got limited use right now, but if it has an issue, then it won't be able to use for responding, so.
Councillor Schwint.
So I guess my proposal on this, I'm good with buying the aerial truck, and we've already approved the pumper. And I'd propose reducing the budget for the Meyer Rescue to 700,000 to give the chief time to explore his other opportunities there as discussed earlier.
Okay, moved by
Propose, I
Councillor
second
Schwint.
that.
seconded
I'm
by
gonna try and
Councillor-
nail you down on motions and voting on it today.
Yeah, well, he moved it, we got him. Is there any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, which is just to accept the, I think it was the rescue in the aerial, but to reduce, no, sorry.
I
It
think
was
it's just getting
reducing
added to the
rescue
list.
Okay.
Is that what you're saying? Are we voting on this?
Let's just, well, are
Adding to the list, I thought.
add it to the list. Okay, let's add it to the list. Okay. Is there anything else in the equipment budget? So equipment also has there's stock for recreation as well. So we're good with the equipment with those changes? Councillor Bryant.
Just a quick question. Are we happy with the Dodge pickup staying in, or did we want to defer that one back another year? We never really went anywhere with that one.
I took that out
Oh, okay.
in what I was proposing.
Okay, fair enough.
I not
Sorry.
the motion.
Okay,
Can
I
you
kind of
read that one?
misunderstood that.
Can you read Councillor Schwint's motion back to us to make sure we captured that?
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. If I got it right, I didn't capture the things that stayed the same, only the things that would change.
Right.
And it was to reduce the 2022 Freightliner rescue from Elmira to $700,000 and remove the Dodge pickup from the equipment capital budget.
Yeah. Okay, so those are the changes to the equipment replacement. Let's go to infrastructure services next.
Mayor, with your permission,
Mhm.
because we have a few motions now sitting on the shelf, would it be possible to have interim Director Fairweather do some cost calculations if we were to go through with this to know what that is gonna be? Because I think that's what you're looking for.
That would be really helpful. I know, we've had sort of running tallies of where we stand with our motions in the past. Is that something you've got a spreadsheet there you can do fairly quickly for us as we go?
Apologize in advance.
I do have a spreadsheet on the go. So what I've got so far, I don't know whether you can share my screen. Beth?
Yeah, I can't share yours.
Okay. So in the capital budget, the ones where we've had motions is on the Breslow Community Center. We had the Fieldhouse Engineering Design Work and the BCC Porch Library Entrance and Exterior. The first one was 85,000. We're reducing it to 40. And the BCC porch, we're taking it from 30 to 40,000. The administrative building, we're taking from 115,000 to 60,000. St. Jacobs Fire Hall is going from 70 to 0. St. Jacobs Arena is going from 330 to 230. Mary Hill Playground, we weren't doing anything with. And there was nothing decided on the WMC flooring and petitions. The Conestoga Rescue is in for 1,169,862. You have the Freightliner Rescue for Elmira. It's being reduced from 1.4 to 700. The aerial platform is still retaining at $1 million. And I understood that the 2015 Dodge pickup quad truck was deferred. Those entries are affecting the infrastructure reserve fund for $260,000. And you have a change to the equipment reserve fund of 790,000 reduction. So those are the changes so far to the budget and reserve funds. There's no impact to the overall levy from those.
Okay. Infrastructure services. So I'll turn to council on the infrastructure services capital. That's Jared's list.
Is that all the recreational stuff we talked about, or was there more recreational
Would you
coming later?
rather start with rec?
Sorry, I just want to make sure it's coming back.
It's coming back.
Okay, thank you.
So do we have, I mean, we've done a lot of discussion on a couple of items in infrastructure services. Are they captured or? Go ahead.
I think we still need to know whether Jared's already done his presentation.
Yeah.
Are you good with that? Because that deals with the capital for infrastructure service.
I'll just jump in and say that I'm comfortable with the changes that Jared proposed within his presentation. I don't know if the rest of council feels about that.
Councillor Kiddo.
Yeah, I am also getting more comfortable with it. I appreciate the effort that it would have taken to get down to there and some of the deferrals that we're making. I share the concern from Councillor Schwent with some of the conversions and some of the hot mix, but hearing that it can be deferred without leaving cars on the side of the road with no way to get home makes me feel a little bit more comfortable, and maybe we can have a more thorough plan of attack on how we're converting some of these roads. So I am comfortable with it as it sits now. I think that it's less than desirable, but that's budget season.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
did you-
sorry.
No, okay, yeah. Okay, so is there a motion? Sorry, Mr. Director Fairweather?
Through the mayor, just for clarification, there was a discussion around the debt and also reallocating the $850,000. So I just want to understand whether the 850 is part of this or just the table debt reductions, leaving the 850 in the hot mix program.
Councillor Brandon.
And Jared can maybe remind us, the 850 was going to Oriole Parkway, in which case I would support that.
That's correct. That's the proposal right now, is to shift the 850,000 that's available to the Capital Bridge program for Oriole Parkway.
Councillor Bryant?
Thank you. With the restructuring we're doing, is there any effect on the debenture payments at all by what's being done, or is it just status quo?
Through the mayor, with what's being tabled, we would be taking the debenture down from 11.5 to just over 6 million.
Right. So our
That was
payment wouldn't change?
The payments would reduce from the 11.5. So I think I tabled that for you earlier on the bottom of the spreadsheet that was sent out.
Right.
So if you would look at that, with what's before council now would be, we're continuing on with the Elmira pumping station, there'd be $810 million or $810,000 of debenture on that. Would be about 103,000, 102,000 to service that. And that would be out of the rate base budget.
Okay,
Okay, and then we're continuing on with the Breslow drain
right.
for 1.944 million. It'd be about 254,000 to service that at the debenture. You have the Capital Bridge and Culvert, there's about 720,000. It'd be about a $93,000 debenture rate. And then the Elmira downtown is one that I'd spoke to earlier. We'd look to doing an interest only loan on that one. So the interest on that, if you assume a 5%, would be about 130. So the total of all of those costs on the operating budget would be about 477,000 or 3.3%.
Thank you.
Okay. Did we have a mover on that? No. Counselor Grant, Counselor Cadeau.
I'm just gonna nail everyone to the motions tonight.
Okay, okay. So you've got that. I think it's as presented.
Yeah, that's what I have as presented by Infrastructure Services.
Okay. Recreation. We have did we have?
I
we had
believe
a
we had a
motion on
motion.
that.
This was the
Yeah.
first one.
We have a motion on the floor.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Are you going, are you not at the stage though where you're gonna vote on that motion? I thought that's where we're getting to.
That's why Eric asked to circle back, I thought, so we could start voting.
So are you, I'll ask council, are you ready to start voting on capital, or do you want to wrestle with the positions as well and then vote on everything at the end? Councilor Burgess.
Thanks, through Mayor Sean. It's just two more quick things on capital. The two vehicles. We never touched on the development vehicle. I don't know if we wanted to go on that one, if that want to be removed.
Okay. That's fully funded from the planning department, right? The building department, sorry, thank you. Comments?
I would support that.
Removing it.
Yeah, just with the extra cost and with the reserves going down.
That, just to be clear, I don't think that will affect any reserves except for the building department budget.
Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't, okay.
My, not to speak for council, but my inclination was that because we didn't bring it up, that it was generally supported. So I would also support the purchase of that vehicle, knowing that it
I
doesn't
think
really
Councillor
affect.
Burgess was taking it out.
No, were you taking it? Oh, you were taking it out? Okay, then I misread Councilor Burgess entirely.
Okay. All right, so it's on the floor to remove it and we'll vote on that in due course. I'll just check with council because I can make a decision, but we can, do you want to do capital completely or do you want to talk about positions and then do everything at once? Councillor Burgess.
Can I just raise one more thing?
Sure.
Sorry. Since I'm picking on vehicles, the RCS new half-ton truck. Can I just ask you guys, if we don't approve that, are you gonna have guys stranded or can you swap vehicles around because you already have a couple?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Johnson, Counselor. If we remove this vehicle from the capital program, we would need to look to increase operating to accommodate a rental for 6 months a year.
So that's specifically for the summer students, basically.
Yeah, so we have rented in the past. We've noticed in the last couple of years, rental pricing has gone up. It's more cost effective for us to purchase, and then have the vehicle for 12 months, and then we sell the vehicle at the end of its useful life as well too, and usually get a significant return.
Counselor Schwinn?
I can accept that logic making sense. I'm just not sure I can support the electric
Yeah.
component of it because it's a pickup truck and I'm just not sure we're quite there on the electric side of things. Of investing in an electric pickup truck makes sense for summer students. And if it was a car, I'd be on board with it, but not.
So through you, Mayor Shantz, the addition to the fleet is also DC funded. I should have mentioned that as well too. So there's no impact to the levy there. And the electric vehicle is a replacement of an existing. So that vehicle, 55,000, I believe, or 50 is funded from the equipment reserve as a replacement. And then the top up of the 30, so 55, yeah, I believe, then top up of the 30 is from the Green and Climate Action Infrastructure Reserve Fund.
So do we have an old truck there that we would sell and that would go into the equipment reserve and whatever we get for that or
Correct.
trade in?
Yeah.
I guess in principle, I can support buying electric cars. I can't support an extra $30,000 on an electric pickup truck yet. In a couple of years from now, batteries are better and we're further along in technology. If we need it as a truck, I'd buy a traditional gas one. If we need it as transportation, then an electric car I can support.
Staff are, through you, Mayor Shantz, I guess staff are trying to move the needle on us achieving our greenhouse gas emissions reductions. And this is the next step, is to transition our fleet to electric. So this would be for the purchase of an extended range electric pickup truck, because we have had conversations with manufacturers. We know that the region of Waterloo, the city of Waterloo, and Kitchener have also purchased the model pickup truck that we're looking at and incorporating those into their fleet.
Counselor Burgess?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, getting the extended range, if I'm not mistaken, is quite a significant increase in cost. If we were just to look at the standard base model, since we're assuming pretty local and we could charge every night, is that an option to save 10 to 15, 20,000?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz. So the extended range is an additional $18,000. The challenge is that when this vehicle is in the fleet towing, we've been advised that the standard range would not be sufficient.
Follow up or? Counselor Bryant?
Through you to Rec, what did we pay in rental charges last year for a vehicle?
So we didn't rent any vehicles last year. We had an addition to the fleet last year as well too. We're roughly, I believe, $1,000 a month, $1,800 a month. Is that right? Yeah, so $1,800 a month times 6 months, we're almost $5,000 a year. Times 10 years, 50 grand. And we're paying 55 for the vehicle. We get the benefit of being able to use it for the other 6 months of the year, and then we're getting significant return on our vehicles when they go to auction as well too.
And what would we do with it during the winter months if we're buying it to accommodate summer students?
So it's used by staff year round. Staff
For what purpose?
for work on our facilities. Yeah.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I was going to jump in and say Rec was kind enough to lend Bio Enforcement a vehicle this winter as well for our overnight winter parking work.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. So did we have a mover and a seconder on anything? No. Okay. Counselor Burgess?
I'm maybe being too picky on that vehicle, but since we didn't use one last year, I would be inclined to see how this year goes, even if we have to do a rental and then do a cost analysis on it. But again, it's not huge dollars, so I'm flexible with whatever the council wants.
Counselor Cadeau?
I'd be more in line with Councillor Schwint's recommendation, as much as it pains me to say, in buying a gas guzzler. If it comes to towing and stuff like that, having that not having to worry about potentials could be a valuable thing. So I see your perspective and I could get behind that probably before getting behind just axing it from the budget.
Is hybrid an option?
For the pickup trucks, I'm not certain, but it's something that we could explore, and I would imagine it's gonna be in and around the, similar price as a internal combustion engine vehicle. Another point as well too, we typically keep our fleet for our pickup trucks for 10 years, and they're in pretty poor shape after 10 years of work. We've been building out our summer complement of seasonal students over the last 5 years because we're taking on additional parks every year. And we've been keeping our vehicles in our fleet past their 10-year end of useful life date. And so what this vehicle is going to do is allow us to kind of right size the ship where we're not extending our vehicles into the 12, 13, 14-year span and get on a program where we have the number of vehicles we have and then we're getting rid of them at 10 years.
Councillor Burgess.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shawns. Yeah, I support the gas vehicle too, but we're talking about two different vehicles in this conversation. So again, we can support the gas one as a replacement, but then we're also in addition of a new 1/2 ton. So that's where I'm talking about we could cut that one out.
Can you clarify that?
If we were to remove that vehicle purchase, which again is, remind council is DC funded, so there's no levy impact for that vehicle. We would be continuing to keep our 2012 and 2013 vehicles in the fleet because we need them in the summer. We need additional vehicles. So this new purchase would allow for us to get rid of vehicles that we should have already gotten rid of 2 years ago.
Councillor Kiddo.
Point of clarification, were you looking to remove both then? Just the one, the replacement with the electric vehicle you're fine with? Okay.
Do you understand? I'm not sure I do. That's
No,
why I'm asking you.
Sorry, Mayor Shawns, I don't. There is a 2014 pickup replacement with an EV in the budget. Is that what we're talking about? No. So I am lost. My apologies.
Okay. Councillor Burgess.
If I can just try and clarify.
What page are you on?
230.
Let's see if I can catch up to you.
And then Mr. Vanderhoff can correct me if I'm wrong. So Councillor Schwint wants to change the 2014 pickup, which was going to be replaced with an EV, to a gas vehicle, saving us 30 grand. And the next line item down, we're looking at a new 1/2 ton pickup for 55K, which I was under the impression is an addition to the fleet, not a replacement. And that's what I was suggesting we cut, and if need be, use a rental and see how this year goes.
Okay.
Maybe Mr. Vanderhoff can clarify, but I think the new 1/2 ton is the one that's DC funded. And then the 2014, is part of that is, I guess, selling off the old vehicle.
That's correct. If council wishes to remove that DC funded vehicle, it would be staff's request that we provide an additional $9,000 in the operating budget for us to rent a vehicle for the year so that our staff are equipped to carry out our summer operations.
Councillor Burgess.
I guess I'm getting the consensus we want to keep it in. And then just on the EV side, whether we want that or not, I'll leave that to get head nods here.
If I may make a suggestion with the EV, maybe what we do is we approve the purchase for an EV, but ask if they can look at the hybrid option, perhaps. And then if that's a cheaper option, maybe better suited for the needs, is something that we could come back to council with approval. Just as a throwing it out there for suggestion for council.
Mr. Vanderbilt.
Yeah, so absolutely staff are happy to return to council with options. Just for council's information, based on the updated purchasing bylaw, the EV replacement, which would be over 75, would need to return I believe to council for approval, or maybe no, threshold's gone up, sorry, apologies. So, so neither of those would, but if council would like, we can return back to council to seek direction.
Does council want direction on that when it comes back for purchase?
Or we could, as an alternative to save us having to return to council for a single vehicle, we could look at an alternative or an internal combustion engine vehicle only and leave the electric off.
Does council want to direct staff to that extent, or do you want to just give them a budget and say, do what you can? Huh?
You need your mic.
Yeah.
So 85 becomes 55?
Yeah, through your mesh yeah. And hopefully that's sufficient for a hybrid model. I mean, we haven't done any costing on a hybrid, but I'm confident that we can find a half ton for that. A regular internal combustion engine vehicle for that.
If it was over that, you would come back to council and we would look at if there was somewhere else to find additional funding.
Yeah, absolutely. Usually if it's a small amount, it's not something that we would return to council for a, $1,000 or a couple $1,000. But if it's
Yeah,
significantly more,
understood.
yeah, absolutely, that we could come back to council for direction.
Okay, so I think the motion then is that we maintain the budget, but reduce the EV replacement to 55,000. Is that where we landed? Yes. Moved by Councillor Burgess and seconded by Councillor Grant. Because she wants to get us through this. Okay. Let's just leave it with all the rest, I think. And Mr. Fairweather's putting that in the spreadsheet and we'll look at it all. I think we've worked our way, have we worked our way through all the capital or have I missed something? Okay. Excellent. So a break, yes, a break. Let's come back at 8:45. Okay, let's come back to order and see how far we can get tonight. So we've worked through the capital budget. We've worked through the fire position, the fire training position. There is a motion on the floor for that. So we have 4 other positions to consider. Let's start with the development. I don't know, with engineering, development and engineering position. Yeah, did you want to speak to that position further?
Yeah, I can speak to it further if there's anything else that I guess I haven't said yet. As I explained before, the position is a growth-related position. It's needed to deal with the number of applications that we do have coming in through the planning department. Right now, we have a good understanding of what applications are expected through pre-consultations and also through discussions and additional lands that are available for development in the township. Also, we are funding this position fully through the development engineering fees. So there's no impact on the tax levy, but rather developers will be paying through their applications for the Services and Development Engineering Division to review their plans. Also, this position, as we mentioned before, will give us the opportunity to ensure that we're getting good development, we're getting the right development, and have the inspections that are needed to ensure that that development is sustainable in the long term and doesn't break down earlier than we would if we weren't able to go out there and inspect it and ensure that that was the right infrastructure. If there's any other questions, though, I can speak further to it.
Are there other questions or a motion? Councillor Cadeau.
There would be no motion if we're wanting to keep this position in, correct?
We still need it. I guess that's true.
What about support?
Motion of support.
Motion of support.
Moved by Councillor Cadeau, second by Councillor Grant. And we'll add that to the list. Did you want to speak to it, Councillor Schwint?
Not this in particular, but I am curious of our staff complement, how many are funded by DC or development engineering charges versus, I guess, the levy? I've never thought of it that way, and I'm kind of curious. So that may be Director Fairweather, is that, it doesn't have to be tonight either, I'm just, would like it raised.
Mr. Brennan?
Just in development services?
Across the board.
Okay.
Which
Well-
positions are
well,
not
I mean-
funded by the levy? I think
Well,
is
I
what
mean,
you're
plan-
asking.
I mean, planning would be levy. Building would be from the building reserve or like, self-funded. And then the Deanne could speak to the number of staff within development engineering. And I don't know, I guess Jared wants to jump in on what's funded.
I just want to be clear, through Mayor Shantz to Councillor Schwint, you're asking on the 4 positions that are currently in this budget, how they're funded, or just in general
In
terms?
general.
Gotcha, in general terms? Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot there that we'd have to probably come.
Can you
Not
bring
just type
that- Can you bring that back?
Sure, yeah,
How it doesn't need to be in the context of this.
Okay,
When you can.
sure. So, yeah, absolutely.
Curiosity, Ms. Freeze.
Sorry, just to expand on that. So planning is funded through the levy. However, a large portion of the planning budget is also supported by development application fees as well. So there's some positions that are kind of partially funded as well, but we can come back with those numbers.
Yeah. Director Fairweather, do you have a breakdown in the planning and infrastructure of how much of the budget is coming from levy and how much is funded elsewhere? Is that something you have at your fingertips?
Give me 1 second. I'll have to find the page within the budget itself. If you look at the development page on the front, it'll tell you exactly how much of that the planning is funded through the levy. I think it's around $280,000. 280,000.
'Cause 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 Can you find out and verify it for us? Thanks. While he's looking that up, are there other questions, Councillor Burgess?
Through you, Mayor Shantz. To be honest, I'm kind of torn on this position. And just not to make you repeat what you said Tuesday night, but could you just clarify the implications if we were to not hire this position? And also, do we currently have, who's currently doing inspections? And is this going to be the second or third of this position?
Director Freeze? Okay.
Sorry, I have a lot of tabs open. Yeah, so the implications of this position would be, the biggest one would be delays, delays in approvals of applications, delays in abilities to inspect, and less inspection opportunities. We do have someone in this position, well, 2 people in this position that do inspections right now. And then we also have 1 person that does development review and 1 manager. So this position would be a combination of development review, inspection, and also they would be responsible for determining the servicing needs for new development in the township. So, yeah, the biggest implication would be delays. Potentially, we might have to refund some applications. And also, we've already been experiencing a significant amount of overtime in this department just to meet the requirements that we've had, and they haven't been able to take vacations. So I would expect additional overtime would also be required. We know that we've got some applications that are coming up in the future that are going to be hard for us to handle.
Can you give us an idea of what the cost would be for one application that was beyond the time frame? I think we have to return DCs for that.
No, it would be a refund of the planning application fee. So I can look up exactly what it would cost, but whatever the applicant paid for that review, we would have to refund back. So it could range from $20,000, or for a larger subdivision, it could be much more significant. And I can find you the average cost for that.
You don't need to do it for me. I just wanted to make the point to council that, you know, if we lose a couple for timing, that's sort of the cost of the position as well. Did we get a motion? I'm losing track. Okay. Yeah, Councillor Burgess.
Sorry, just one more follow-up. If I'm vaguely remembering, Director Poupey talked about some missed inspections, like with asphalt or something, we weren't getting the correct thickness. So is that a risk too, or in history, we haven't had the time or the ability to fully inspect all the required criteria?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Burgess, it's exactly right. I think that, you know, we are understaffed in the development engineering side of things, and that is a reality. It certainly happened in the past. We had 2 staff for all of the development that we have done, which they've done yeoman's work in what they were able to do. So it's no fault of any one person. It's just the result of resourcing and where we have to be. Geography plays a role here. Obviously, we're very large geographically. So, you know, development happens when developers want to do that. We have to be reactionary. We can't very well be proactive except for our planning piece. And that is an important part of this position as well, is to plan for that servicing. Servicing needs to be in place, obviously, for development to occur. That is an important part. We are undertaking all that work right now. And quite frankly, a lot of that is on my desk. And, you know, it probably shouldn't be. But that's part of what we're trying to do, is, again, right size some of the departments to take on the responsibilities that they should take on, essentially.
Mr. Brenneman.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize what you've heard from both Deanne and Jared is, while I recognize and support Deanne's comment about the fact that, you know, one of the major concerns is the potential for the return of fees. Respectfully, I believe the last comment is the most important. If we don't properly inspect the infrastructure, that can result in tens of millions of dollars of premature cost that we end up having to deal with. And that's more of a concern that we should have. The only other thing that I would want to speak to that we haven't spoke to is the fact that in the time I've been here too, over time, we've lost a lot of longtime employees. And, you know, for example, Randy Miller was our previous manager of development engineering. Randy was here for over 35 years. When you bring on a new team and new staff, there are realities that, in terms of capacity, that you have to adjust in terms of your organizational structure and the workload, et cetera. And I think, we're going to continue to go through that as an organization as we go through succession planning and things of that nature. But ultimately, the last thing I want to emphasize, and I'm glad Mr. Poupé raised it because I was going to, but I want to emphasize it, is right now, Mr. Poupé does not have a second in command in terms of manager of engineering. That was something that was changed in the previous org structure. There is a need for that position, but what it more importantly deals with right now is he needs to be concentrating on the infrastructure services department, but he gets pulled into far too many development issues as a reality of making sure that they're not going to inherit problems down the road in terms of major infrastructure issues.
Okay. Any other discussion on that? Okay, I'll let that sit with the others. Bylaw. Kirk Smith.
I better turn my camera. Here we go. Thank you, Mayor Sean. So I guess what I could say is I could remind council that during my budget presentation, I showed a 33% increase in our request for service. In simple terms, that means in 2013, each officer that we had handled 300 cases a year. In 2023, each officer handled 450 cases a year. So their cases are up. And when we have an increase in our request for service, we haven't had time to support other departments to the level that they need. We haven't been able to maintain our older bylaws or do any reviews that council requested. And we haven't been able to do anything new like implement AMPS. That's been on our work plan for a few years. With the manager, it would bring us back into that each officer handling about 300 cases a year, which would allow us to do have the extra capacity to do the things that we haven't had time to do. Those sort of an overview of what like the most simple justification for the position is, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Can you just remind us of the benefits of AMPS?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Schwantz. So AMPS is essentially taking our tickets when we wish out of the provincial offenses court system. It's a more flexible process. It's a process that provides better customer service. It is more, it allows council to make more decisions, whereas more decisions were being made by the province under the old system. And it's significantly faster. So we were seeing, 2-year timeframes to have tickets processed by the Provincial Offences Act court. And we've seen other municipalities that have implemented AMPS be able to do that in about 2 to 3 months. And again, hybrid is an option, but for anyone that wants to attend in person, we can do it here in our municipal office rather than downtown Kitchener.
Realizing that everything isn't always about bottom line, but is there a bottom line benefit to us with AMPS?
So the calculations that I provided were an estimate, best estimate I could at this point for a half year, so implementing in June. When I looked at that, it was very minimal, about $900 in additional revenue for the year. So we're not talking significant dollars in terms of revenue. I think what you would see is better enforcement. So we talked about officer safety, being able to send a ticket by mail, especially in cases of parking when people might drive off. We talked about being able to issue a ticket where you otherwise wouldn't be able to. So the school safety is a big one. And then again, it's not a benefit to us, but if you're thinking sort of in the grand scheme of things as one taxpayer, it would reduce the burden on the Provincial Offences Act court, which again is overwhelmed right now.
Councillor Cadeau.
Excuse me. I kind of liked where Councillor Schwint was going with this when we spoke last. I I recognize the need for it and I recognize how valuable AMPS could be if implemented properly and implemented well. With this position, we would be able to do both. Without this position, we could implement AMPS, but it would probably be delayed and it wouldn't be comprehensive. It's covering parking tickets is my understanding. But that's a start. So I think that we should maybe explore potentially elevating one of our bylaw officers to the manager role. And then just having one bylaw officer for now, and maybe we look at it next year and see if there's still a need, and perhaps a request could come forward to fill that other bylaw vacancy or whatever that looks like.
Councillor Schwint.
Appreciate the comments, Councillor Cadeau, and I guess the only thing I'd say is I like that direction, but I think the direction should be that we're looking for less time spent on the enforcement side of things, move that, reprofile that work to developing the AMPS program. And I've got confidence that Deputy Clerk Smith can manage his team appropriately. I don't want to suggest how he should implement that. But nuts and bolts of it is we don't have room for another full-time position, and we'll reprioritize the work towards AMPS is my goal in this.
So just to be clear, you're suggesting we reduce our enforcement? Yeah.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, to council. Yeah, I think one of the things we have to be careful about, and I think Councillor Schwitz picking up on this, I think you need to hear from the Director of Corporate Services or Clerk Smith. We've discussed, leading up to today, some alternatives. If council doesn't see fit with proceeding with the manager at this time, he doesn't, he does have an alternative that he feels would be more in order in terms of how to properly manage the area, and maybe he can speak to that.
Through you, Mayor Sean. So if council can't support the manager position as we proposed, I think the next best alternative I can offer to council is what I would just say is reorganizing the department and sort of let me deal with the details on that. But basically to reduce one FTE, so one position. I would ask for additional funding for consulting to help with the AMPS implementation and part-time hours. I think with that, I could save council about $34,000 is what I was looking at. AMPS, as council identified, AMPS would have to be a multi-year project. We will get to reviewing other bylaws as time allows, so it won't be maybe as quickly as we might have hoped. Having said that, I wouldn't recommend changes to the way we respond to public complaints or how we provide our customer service. And I think as Director Poupey talked about the other night, I wouldn't recommend any changes to the winter parking. That saves the infrastructure services staff time and money, and also you'd see some reduction in revenue there. What I could suggest is if you wanted me to look at even further reductions in part-time hours, we could do a little less of the school enforcement and proactive noise enforcement. But that would be my sort of suggestion: $34,000 in savings, remove the one FTE, and reorganize the department.
So there was a motion to that effect. I think that reflects, no, there was no motion. Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Can I get some clarification? So we will still see a cost on this position? I'm a little confused on how that's coming across.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shawns, if council is looking for a department reorganization or restructuring, there would still be some cost to that. To do that, there would likely be some changes in work demands. I would need additional consulting services. That was Mr. Turner, who is here and helped me present the AMPS report. And then I'm suggesting additional part-time hours. Again, if council is not comfortable with the part-time hours, we could reduce that even further, but that would probably most likely impact the school parking and the overnight noise.
Councillor Schwint.
I think we're going in the same direction on this one, Clerk Smith. I guess I'm a little more aggressive in terms of reducing not expanding part-time hours, and I'm not real keen on more consulting. If it takes an extra 2 months to do the AMPS program, I can live with that. If it means less enforcement, other than the winter enforcement in November, I can live with that as well. We have to wear, if we're cutting you back, there will be less services. I'm prepared to wear that. We're short on cash.
Through you, Mayor Shantz, I think I could, like I said, I think I could save, show a $44,000 reduction in savings. What I would suggest though is I don't think we can do the AMPS program without the consultant. Mr. Turner is an expert in the field. He's done it several times before, but we would need his services. And if you recall, when I was giving council the net cost of a bylaw manager, it was reducing the consulting services in order to save some revenue. So we would need to build some of that back in if you're looking at a reorganization, but still doing AMPS as when possible.
For you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Smith, Jeff, could you actually speak to the fact about, because I want clarity for council in terms of what you see, if not having a manager, how long AMPS in the fullness of time will take to fully implement. Like, it won't be, it won't be a short time frame. It will be so many bylaws per year over X number of multiple years.
Yeah, sorry, through you, Mayor Shantz, to answer Mr. Brenneman's question. What I would see us doing then is starting with parking. That's probably your biggest bang for your buck and where we issue the most tickets. I'm not sure with a reorganized structure. I think we could do parking this year, but it would probably be later in the year. And then there's probably about 20 other bylaws we could do AMPS for. So if we do 1 or 2 a year, you're talking a 10-year program to get that all done with that sort of lower level of resources.
Councillor Burgess.
For you, Mayor Shantz. Yeah, I support the extra consulting fees for AMPS. I think it'd be good to get that in place, and having an expert in that field can probably move it along quicker than trying to figure it out ourselves. Just clarity on reorganization, as you're saying, is that still moving one of the bylaw officers to a manager has been kind of floated around here? Or are you saying that's no salaries changes, no title changes, we're just gonna change hours and consulting?
So through you, Mayor Shantz, I would suggest a title change, but I would just ask that maybe you let me figure out the specifics. There would be some changes to the structure, but no additional FTE, if that's what council is concerned about.
Does someone want to make a motion on that then? Councillor Grant.
We're waiting on me, I'll motion. With the amendments as suggested.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Sustainability or revenue? Where do you want to go? Yeah. Okay, revenue.
Through the mayor, I've given you some information, but I'm going to provide you some background as to sort of how and why the ask is coming. Right now, we have one billing clerk. She works about 20 days a week. We have approximately 7,500 counts. We do off-cycle billing, so we bill half.
Sorry.
20 days. Yeah. About 20 days a month is what the clerk works. So it's 140 hours worth of staff time. Yeah. Okay. It's 140 hours a month. So we have approximately 7,500 accounts, and we bill half 1 month and half the following month. So she's billing about 3,700 accounts a month. And the normal practice in utility billing is you usually have a 5 to 10% issue with account reads where you have to do some follow-up work. So that leaves about 188 to about 380 accounts that she has to review. So that could be the reads outside of the tolerance for consumption, or we have a zero read or anywhere in between. So she has to follow up on those accounts to determine if the read's valid or invalid. The time frame for reading is normally you try to download your reads in one day and get the bills out within 5 to 6 business days. And so she's focused on billing for 5 to 6 of the days in the month. That leaves her with about 14 days remaining in the month. And during that time, she has to continue with account follow-up on the accounts that she couldn't complete the analysis before the bills go out. So the bills go out and they could be right or they could be wrong, but they're issued at that point in time. The corrections are done based on the information she has back at the point in time. So then that leaves that, and then there's the continuation of follow-ups from the previous month that she works on. During that time, she's also taking phone calls and following up on inquiries from customers. And in addition to that, we do final readings. So those are customers that are moving in or moving out, and we're averaging about 8 to 9 per week based on past practice. We also do the billings, but right now we're running about a 10% collection rate. So that means 90% of the people pay their bill on time, 10% don't. So then we have to generate arrears notices. So we're running between 380 and 390 arrears notices being mailed out every month. And then in addition to those, she's setting up people that want to go on to e-billing. So she's signing them up and taking them off. We also have the pre-authorized payment program. So with that, she's sending out forms, setting up new customers, and making changes to existing customers. And then in addition, we're trying to follow up on the delinquent accounts of those people that haven't paid even after the arrears notice, try to review the account and look at that and make a determination. And then in addition to that, if we can't collect, she initiates the transfers of those accounts to tax. So she has to accumulate and do all this work within the thing, because the start of the following month, she's into doing that whole process over again. So we really don't have the depth of resources to do the proper analysis and to chase down the collection of the accounts. So this is where we're looking at getting an additional body, because if you split the bills off between the two clerks, you would have about 34 days instead of 14 days to follow up and chase down the accounts and determine. So it's not unusual for a customer's account to be going out with, comes in with a 0 and we don't have an account. We just issue the bill with 0 consumption. And that could go on month after month until somebody has the time to follow up and collect that, and then make a determination of the required adjustments, which could be a large bill for an individual customer to receive. So we're trying to eliminate those issues, and that's why we've come forward with the position request.
Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to Intern Director Fairweather. With the implementation of the new database, could that give us some avenues for automation that could prevent them from having to create those delinquent letters on a month-by-month basis? Couldn't they just auto-generate something to be issued? Like, that's my fear, is that if we hire this new role full-time, that when we get this new database coming in and we're seeking to automate a lot of these services, it'll make this position redundant. So I guess that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Through the mayor, I don't see the position becoming redundant. They have functionality now that we've got with the downloading of the remote reading that we can't activate. So this position right now, we have the capability to run reports and look at accounts that have continuous water consumption. And they would set off an alarm and create a report that we could follow up on. However, we don't have the resources to do that. So we're basically chasing our tail on trying to do this stuff. Putting in a new system, I don't believe will change the need. I believe it'll allow us to get to some of the stuff that we're not doing presently. To follow up on a read request, it's not just looking at the account and doing some analysis. It's going back to Public Works and getting Public Works out to the site to inspect the meter, carry out the work there, and then get the information back. process the adjustments, and then follow up on whatever needs to be done to the account to correct the underbilling. So that's where we're coming on that. And I don't see the need changing with the automation of a new system.
I can remember in my term here, one or two that got elevated to the place where I heard about it, where people were they felt they were overbilled because they were catching up, and there was a lot of background work that needed to be done, and a lot of extra work generated because it got to that point. Councillor Schwint and then Burgess.
Thanks. I appreciate the questions, Councillor Cadeau, but my mind's going, if we're improving the database and putting a lot of money towards IT and we're not saving any time, we're doing something wrong. So we should evaluate that a little bit, I think. Second question, you talked entirely about the water and wastewater billing, but yet a third of that's being funded by the levy. So I would have thought all would be wastewater and water, or there's some other duties that would come out levy. So I'm curious what that might be. And third part would be, can we adjust our billing cycles and bill every other month or every quarter for water and get it staggered to make it more effective? People don't need a $30 bill every month. They could take a $100 bill every 3 months type thing to try and build more efficiencies in the system.
Through the mayor, to answer the first question, right now with the two staff we have the manager of revenue. She's predominantly 100% tax, and she oversees. So she is doing everything in relation to the property tax operations within the city. So she does all the bills. She's got all of the follow-ups, all the telephone calls. She does all of the apportionments for severances. It's all falling on her. With this position, we're hoping that we can use that position to shore up some of the time the manager's spending doing these things. So that's the idea of the 1/3 tax. As for the application, we are generating utility bills. The system does function to generate that. Utility billing is, no matter what system you go to, is going to be pretty straightforward. It's a meter times the size, times the consumption, times the rates. They all do it. So even moving a system is not going to change the billing routine. The issue becomes on the need to follow up on the errors that come in. So you get a zero read. It may be legitimate. It may not. The meter could have froze. It couldn't. It might be okay. The person's gone away on holidays, just hasn't advised that he's away. But that takes time to follow up on. So that's what the position's there. If it is a zero read, it's a lot harder to do. You've got to get somebody to go out to the property, physically inspect the meter, determine if it's functioning or malfunctioning, switch the meter out. So now you've got a meter exchange on the property and you've got to try and final out the old read. And then you have to look at consumption to do an average estimate of what the bill should have been, because you haven't billed the customer for the volume that he's consumed. And that takes time. If it's a new meter, it could take you 6 months before you can do an adjustment, because you've got to get three reading histories of the consumption in order to make a determination of what the adjustment should be. So all of those have to be tracked by the billing clerk. And that's where we're running into issues. And the time frame, if they're pressed for getting the bills in and getting the information out, sometimes the bills are going out with zero review. They're just downloading the reads and generating the bills. So that's not a good sense of operations. So even if we were to switch to a financial system that better, different billing utility, I don't see the need going away. I see the data being better and the information being better and the timeliness. Generating arrears notices, we're not getting them out on time. We're running behind. So they're supposed to go out after a certain number of days. We're not meeting that expectation. We can't. So they're falling behind on those. So by the time we get them out, it's later than it should be. And the transfers to tax are not happening at the time frame that they should. So that's why we're looking for the additional body to allow us to meet the standards and expectations.
Actually, one other question I had was on the timing. Like, could we bill every 2 months or every 3 months to cut the workload by 50% or 66%.
Currently, we bill bi-monthly, so that's how it's being billed. I have experience where the utility bills have been done every 3 months, and that becomes a huge nightmare. The bills are usually large, people struggle to get it, and if I have a water leak, it goes on for 3 months before it's detected. And those bills could be, you know, several thousands of dollars by the time you get it. The intent of utility billing is try to get down to monthly billing as opposed to going to a longer frequency.
Mr. Brenner?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Fairweather, could you also talk about, you spoke before at staff level about the fact that in a lot of the positions within finance now, there's one person. And if that person is off sick for an extended time period, there's no cross-training and backfill because there's nobody to be able to fill into that, and what your hope is, you know, with trying to start down that road.
So with this position, we're looking at shoring up the water, the tax, and also the payroll area. Right now, if our payroll individual was to go off sick, it's either the treasurer or the other manager that has to step in to run payroll, which isn't a good fit. So we're hoping we can get some more depth on cross-training. Also, if Teresa was to go off on illness as the manager of revenue, it would be either the treasurer or the other position that has to step in and deal with the property taxation operations. So we're trying to get some depth that we can take some of those functions off of those desks and put them onto this position in order to provide us some depth on coverage for vacation or sickness on the operations.
Any other questions? Motion of support or otherwise? Okay. There is no opinion. Councillor Burgess.
Since nobody's talking, I think from what I've heard and head nod and stuff, that unless we can find savings elsewhere, this isn't something we want to add. So maybe make a motion to remove this one.
Discussion. Okay, we'll let that one sit till we go with it. All right, and the final one is the sustainability position.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, further to what was presented last week, and certainly you've heard from various community advocates. We're advocating for a full-time sustainability climate change position. We believe that it holds benefit for the corporation, not just in terms of implementing the 80 by 50 and 50 by 30 plan related there too, which is the Waterloo Region or Climate Action Waterloo Region plan. As well, we believe that there will be benefits for other departments, similar to the way, you know, we hope always that bylaw enforcement is staffed to a level that they can support other departments. We can see the benefit, as I spoke previously last week, in terms of a department like Infrastructure Services when they're dealing with certain environmental situations related to stormwater management, maintenance, et cetera, be able to rely on the advice and assistance of this type of position. You know, I know one of the things that was discussed at one point during the budget deliberations was I think some members of council were supportive of the position only if it was on a short-term contract position. I need to say to all of council that, one of my answers to Councillor Schwint with respect to meeting certain performance metrics around grants, and the ability to implementation of the plan. Respectfully, I'm not going to be able to stand behind that if we have a 2-year contract position. You'll be lucky to get somebody with a basic level of education and experience, to be able to start out in terms of doing this position. That's what the concern I would have based on 30 years of hiring contract positions. The shorter the contract, the less education, less experience that you're likely to get in terms of position. That all being said, I'll reiterate something I also said during the budget deliberations, and that is, if council does not see fit to support this position, I know it was not this council that supported the 80 by 50 by 50 by 30, but if you were not to support this position, then I think you respectfully need to revisit the commitment to that target, because we will not be able to meet that target based on the existing staff complement. We don't have the in-house expertise to be able to deliver on that. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Councillor Schwint.
See, hit on a couple important points there, and I'm curious. We as a council add a full-time position, regardless of climate change or someone to move snow on the sidewalk, and we decide 2 years' time or 3 years' time to remove the position. What's the process for doing that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to council, I mean, if we were in that unusual situation, and it does happen, I guess, in some organizations, basically what you would be looking at is having to do some sort of termination with severance.
Or I would assume if it was a lack of work, it could be a layoff.
Yes, potentially, but more than likely the other.
So I guess if I make comments on this one, I've struggled with this from day one and been very reluctant. But at the same time, I understand this budget. We as councillors, we're making a budget not just for things we use. I use the rec center. I don't use other facilities, and the climate change one, I've heard from people, they do want to make advances in climate change. So I can reluctantly support this with some caveats. And Mr. Brenneman said about you won't get the qualified person for 2 years on a contract. Unfortunately, I agree with him. So I guess I think if we're going to do it, we have to do it with the provision that we're going to review it in 2 years if the position is working out or not. Admittedly, there may be costs associated with that, but so be it. But to me, this position's got to be focused on implementing actions and finding funds to implement those actions. I don't want to hear reports on we're falling behind, this is how we're matching up on targets. Let's achieve things. Then we're making as much use of the money as we can and get value from the person. So in that situation, I would support this position this year.
Councillor Burgess.
Through you, Mayor Sean, it's just clarity to Councillor Schwint there. You're supporting it on contract or on full-time?
Full-time, but that's why I asked how you can make positions if you need to. Hopefully this is a huge success, but we can't go into it with one hand tied behind our back.
Just personal opinion from me. In reality, I can't see us ever letting a position go if we didn't think it was meeting targets. If you're wanting to have a fair analysis after 2 years, I think it has to be a contract position. We're not going to let somebody go just because they didn't get enough grants or something when they're full-time. That's a bit of a tough situation there, and I wouldn't even support that at that point.
Councillor Grant.
Through you to the council, I think part of that, not just the funding, but also meeting those different targets. So I don't think it's necessarily tied to just how much money they bring in, but also if they're able to hit those targets. So that being said, I know this has been a longstanding kind of position that I've supported, and I would support Counselor Schwint in this as well, that I think I would support the full-time position with those caveats of coming back in 2 years to assess that. I think that's a good metric. And pulling from the Climate Reserve Fund for the 2 years to do that, I think is a good time to make that switch over and do that review.
So moved, seconded, Counselor Cadeau.
If I could weigh in on this, I appreciate the movement. I still have concerns with the source of funding for this one. I would like to see it not come out of the climate reserve and just be added to the levy. I know that it would be another percentage, if not more. But I recognize never going to get council support on that one. So I'm more than happy to support the recommendation as made by Councillor Schwint.
I guess one follow-up caveat that I'd like to introduce is when the posting's made, I would like council to see the job description and metrics so we can be somewhat involved in that, because this is a very political position and decision. So I think having some input from this council would be worthwhile.
Okay, if I can just interject. Mr. Brenneman would like to have a closed session with us on this topic now. If we could have a motion to go into closed, Counselor Grant, Counselor Schwint, I know, all those in favor? And that's carried, so it would be senior staff. Sorry, Connor, thank you.